My toxic entitled neighbors have aggressive dogs they refuse to keep in check, literally allowing them to go all over the place as they feel the need to try and attack me or my dogs anytime they see us. But after trying to have a civil conversation with them, they decided to get nasty and tell me to get lost, forcing me to get revenge by literally exposing them for their crappy behavior and shaming them publicly in the entire community. Here's how I did it. Okay, for a bit of context, I have 3 dogs. I'm super conscious of being a responsible owner because if they bark outside, they're brought in immediately, and each one of them has been trained extensively in obedience. My neighbor also has 3 dogs. When they first moved in, they were shocked at how well-trained mine were. I could tell that it made them insecure because theirs were, and still are, completely out of control. Not to mention they're reactive and constantly barking. So when they would see me address mine, they would tell me, "Don't do that, they're just being dogs and doing their job." Which, if we're gonna translate that, they're basically saying they don't want to feel bad about their own dog's chaotic behavior. Now, my yard is fenced in with a vinyl picket fence that cost about $8,000. They built their fence using mine as the 4th wall, which wasn't an issue at all. That is, until one of their dogs started repeatedly trying to break through my fence to attack my dogs. Now, I went above and beyond to avoid conflict, and in fact, I installed a privacy backing on my fence and planted about 15 boxwoods, which was about $1,000 more spent on this. And this was all in some kind of attempt to block the view so their dogs wouldn't go berserk. My neighbor's husband literally mocked me by saying, "That's not gonna work. They're still gonna hear each other." And you know what? Spoiler alert, he was completely right. So after the extra financial investment and the labor-intensive work of planting the bushes didn't work, I sent a polite, carefully worded text, and I asked that they prevent their dog from attacking my fence, as I was concerned it was gonna eventually break. I even offered solutions, I emphasized safety, and said I still wanted to maintain good rapport with one another. Well, their response was to play the victim and blame my dogs. Then I started getting unhinged text messages from the wife about my message ruining her week, and how stressful this is for them, as well as the fact that apparently I owe them an apology. Eventually, they put up a 6-foot privacy fence attached to mine, which as a side note is a completely illegal height. So this would be problem solved, right? Well, no. They started letting their dogs off the leash in the unfenced areas. I ended up getting security cameras installed, and thank God I did, because I caught everything on video. The same dog trying to break through my fence to attack my dogs, their other 2 running into my garden, and all of them running at large in the street where people walk constantly. After they started cursing me out when their dog tried attacking mine, I got the police involved, which really infuriated her. The lieutenant himself told me to keep sending every clip, saying that he would give them a fine every single time. He was genuinely concerned about safety in the neighborhood after seeing my footage. And it was here that my petty revenge really started to take place. Tonight, I caught them on camera walking their dog in the wildlife refugee across the street. The dog takes a crap and they simply don't pick it up. My neighborhood has a Facebook group where people constantly complain about mystery poop, but this time, instead of ignoring it, I sent the video to our community leader. He told me to post it publicly and also asked me that I email every resident about their behavior, which was something I was happily gonna do. And now the entire neighborhood knows that they're scumbags who not only let their dogs off the leash and have an aggressive dog trying to attack others, but they also don't pick up after themselves. People even commented that they've stopped walking on our block because they felt unsafe, and others said they always wondered who was leaving piles of crap all over the place. Even better, our community leader also personally went over to shame them and said that he'd bring it up with the cops as well, which honestly is so great because my god, power in numbers, baby. So tonight, instead of me being frustrated, they got called out publicly, they got shamed privately, and will likely get fined again pretty soon. And I just got to sit back knowing every single word I said was backed by video evidence, with no way for them to even try and spin it against me. Okay, I love this so much because I cannot stand toxic neighbors. It's like, dude, we already have to live next to each other and put up with each other's garbage. The least you could do is try to train your dogs properly and, I don't know, like take care of them. Letting them run loose and attack my dogs and possibly attack other people in the neighborhood, like, I'm sorry, that's not okay in my opinion. Especially when you're gonna subtly and like blatantly victim blame and be like, wow, you're stressing me out. You need to apologize for ruining my week. And it's like, lady, your dog nearly ruined my dogs. Like, I can imagine this dog trying to like chew through the fence, dude. Like, that's crazy. So good for you for getting this revenge and literally shaming them, hopefully, into silence. Because neighbors like this are honestly the worst thing in the world to deal with. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for calling my friend out for constantly wasting my time, as she is constantly late to anything that we schedule? Because right now, I think I may have lost a friend for calling her out, and I'm just not sure what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, I want to start off by saying that my friend has a habit of being late, and I'm not talking like 15 to 20 minutes late. She's at minimum 45 minutes late. I wanted to meet her for a coffee before I was flying to London, and she asked me to meet her at a salon at 2:30. While leaving my house, which is close to the salon, I checked with her if she got parking, and she said she'll be there at 3 o'clock. Then at 3 o'clock, she said it will be 4 o'clock instead. Well, I called her out for disrespecting my time, and I told her that I was flying the next day, and I had a million things to do. It wasn't fair to keep me waiting without a heads up. She should have told me when she knew that she was going to be late and not waited for me to ask. She then said to me, well, I've got a schedule that keeps me on my toes. And I told her we all do. We all have jobs, lives, responsibilities, and families, and to do this is just disrespectful. She then told me that I come off too strong and asked me to stop talking for a while. At this point, I lost my temper and I said that she always avoided accountability and made it about energy or coming off too strong instead of owning up to the fact that she should have been more respectful of my time. Now, this isn't the first time. She's done this multiple times, and I've gently told her, but she's not registering it. Well, now she stopped talking to me and just unfollowed me on Instagram entirely. So, am I the jerk for calling her out here? Because honestly, I'm still incredibly pissed off. Okay, dude, this is not a good friend at all. She literally was like, what, an hour and a half late for you meeting up? And here you are trying to fly out to London the same day? Like, dude, what's going on right now? And also, I want to say that I know exactly the kind of person you're talking about. They're the kind of person who literally does nothing wrong and yet is always disrespectful of everybody's time. And you hit the nail on the head for accountability. They always divert what you're saying as if, oh man, you're being really mean right now. As if the onus is on you to try and correct yourself instead of them owning up to their mistake. It's like they're trying to divert any blame from themselves back to you, all because you're rightfully so pissed off at them. So in my opinion, I think you did the right thing because this was not a good friend in the slightest. And in my opinion, this is no longer a bad habit, but instead this is a clear and obvious choice that she's making at your expense. An entitled neighbor has been stealing Wi-Fi from my tenant for over 5 years. And now that my tenant is moving out, they're demanding that I plug the Wi-Fi back in so that they can do their job as they work from home. Here's what happened. Okay, so I have a few apartments that I rent out, and today one of the tenants moved out. So I went over for the inspection, the key handover, and the paperwork. Now this guy had been a fantastic tenant over the years, and today was no exception. The place had been cleared out and cleaned, making checking off the boxes a complete formality. When I got there, the only thing left was the internet modem. This particular apartment had had a family member living in it years ago, and I had arranged the internet for the place. When this tenant moved in, who I will call Moose for the sake of the story, just for the sake of simplicity, we agreed to just leave the internet as is and add an extra $50 to the rent. And this was back in 2018, and honestly, this was no problem across the board. Assuming the next tenant could look after whatever they want with respect to internet and cable and phone bundle and whatever else they might want, I planned to cancel the service and return the equipment. I unplugged the modem and cables and I left it on the kitchen counter while we reviewed the unit and the paperwork. While looking around, his phone buzzed a few times and actually rang once. And he very politely ignored all of that while we were talking and walking around. But then suddenly there was a knock at the door. I thought to myself, weird. I had arranged for a viewing of the place while I was here, but how did they get in? Nobody buzzed them in, and there's no way to get to the right floor if you're not buzzed in. Well, Moose opens the door and it's not the people coming to view the place. It's the next door neighbor. And let's call her Veronica for the sake of the story. She comes in and there's a bit of, oh yeah, you're moving out. Where are you going to? And all this other chit chat. But she's eyeing the modem sitting on the counter. Eventually, she says something like, would it be okay if you plug that back in? I was actually using it. And when Veronica said that, I thought to myself, wait a second, you've been using the internet and the Wi-Fi? And yeah, indeed, it turns out back in 2020, at the start of the pandemic, her office shut down and her job turned into full-time work from home. And at some point early in the pandemic, she had some internet issues and asked Moose if she could hop on his Wi-Fi, which did have a clear signal to her place, all the way until her issues were finally resolved. And at the time, he just said to her, sure, no problem. Well, fast forward more than 5 years later, and it turns out she long ago canceled her own service and is full-time running her office, her smart TV, and her phone off of my Wi-Fi. And now that the plug got pulled, she wants it back. She's offering to give Moose money, saying, but please, just plug it in. It's Friday. I need to work and I need it over the weekend. I'll sort it all out on Monday. But Moose doesn't know what to say, and neither do I if I'm being completely honest. The truth is, Moose never noticed it. It's high-speed internet and clearly enough for everyone's devices, and the monthly contract lands in the middle of the month for some reason, so it's actually paid for the next 2 weeks. In the midst of all of that, someone buzzes from downstairs, and it's the people for the viewing. I'll call them Archie and Betty for the sake of the story. They come up, and then oddly, Veronica and Betty actually know each other. They often run into each other at the same Pilates studio that they go to. Veronica said to her, oh, it'd be so much fun if you moved in. We could go to class together and all this other stuff. Well, Veronica offers to take the modem, plug plug it in at her place, and promise to deal with the cable company and all that. So basically, she just wants to take it over since it's all working. Now, I'm not sure it works like that, and you can't just take the equipment next door and have it work. But she says to me, "Oh, please let me try." So I say to her, "Okay, go ahead." She leaves with the modem, having agreed to deal with the internet company and return the hardware if needed, which actually saves me a lot of hassle. So she leaves, and a few minutes later, she texts me that it's working and says thank you so much. I then spoke to the internet company and I explained the situation, and I canceled the service effective the end of the billing cycle. Veronica has a couple of weeks to set up an account, and they'll either just move the existing equipment over to it, or she can swap it for new hardware. Either way, I'm completely done with it. So I don't know, maybe she's entitled and maybe she's not. She made a comment at one point which had to have been tongue-in-cheek because it was so outrageous. She said something like, "Oh, come on, please leave it on, don't be cheap." And sure, I might be the cheap one, but you are literally the one who used free Wi-Fi for half a decade and didn't even bother setting something up for yourself until you got caught. Oh wow, the original poster is way more patient than I am. If I found out someone from another unit was using the Wi-Fi I bought for the unit I was renting out, I would be like, "No, you're not going to use that Wi-Fi. Are you nuts? Set it up yourself, dude. Like, what are you doing?" So yeah, it's probably a good thing I was not in this story or in this circumstance, because I don't think I would have been that agreeable, because this seems really selfish and just incredibly entitled. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. It got about 3 million views on the subreddit, so if you want your story to be seen by a lot of people, then please check out the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories, because we would love to hear what you have to say. Am I the jerk for refusing to attend my sister's wedding, all because she made a rule about my wheelchair, saying that she doesn't want it in any photos because she says it'll be distracting? Because right now I'm saying that I simply don't want to show up, which is now causing a massive rift in my family. Here's what's going on. I'm a 27-year-old female, and I've been in a wheelchair since I was 19 years old. My sister is getting married next spring and asked me to be a bridesmaid. Now, I was really touched and I said yes immediately. But then she sat me down and explained that her wedding is going to be aesthetic and vintage garden party themed. And she asked if I could find a way to not use the wheelchair that day. Now, I thought I misheard, but she said she didn't want my chair in the photos because it would distract from the look that she was going for. Well, I told her that was impossible and honestly pretty insulting. She then backtracked and said that maybe I could just sit in the back so it's not as noticeable. But I was devastated when she said this, and I told her if my presence in a wheelchair embarrassed her that much, then I just simply wouldn't come at all. Well, now my family's torn. My mom says I was right to set boundaries, but my dad says I'm being dramatic and it's just one day. My sister is crying that I'm ruining her wedding by refusing to compromise. So honestly, am I the jerk for refusing to attend? Because right now I'm still very hurt and I just don't know what to do. Okay, dude, your sister is so toxic. What is she thinking, dude? Seriously, let's think about this for a second. She is seriously telling you need to get out of that wheelchair for my wedding. But it's like, okay, and what do you want me to do? Start walking around? The original poster needs that wheelchair to move around and function as a human. Is she really gonna act like, "Oh, well, this just doesn't look good with my aesthetic, so please sit in the back"? Like, dude, what are you talking about? At that point, I would rather just not go. So to that end, I don't blame the original poster at all. Like, there's no way in the world I would ever be like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I'll sit in the back in a chair that I can't move around in. It's fine that I can't walk, no big deal." So no, you're not the jerk for turning this down. I would have done the exact same thing, because what she's asking for is quite literally delusional and completely insane. My entitled district manager basically implied that my job was useless. So I maliciously complied and allowed him to follow me around for the day, showing him once and for all just how much I do for my job, resulting in massive changes in the store I was working for. Here's how it all went down. Okay, so at the time I was working in a toy shop and it was coming up to Christmas. So just try to imagine how busy we were, but then multiply that by like 10 because we were way busier than that. Each worker was given a specific section of the store to keep tidy and stocked, and mine at the time was what we called boys' toys, all the action figures and so on. However, I was the only person other than managers who could process refunds, exchanges, and so on, and because boys' toys was right beside the tills, and the managers could be anywhere at the time as we didn't have any radios, the cashiers got into the habit of calling me for help. And with it being nearly Christmas, there were a lot of exchanges. There were refunds and other things needing my intervention. Our store was franchised and we had a district manager who had never worked the floor a day in his life. I mean, this guy had some kind of business degree. He visited our store a few weeks before Christmas, came into the boys' toys an hour or so before closing, and got mad because it was messy and there were some gaps in the shelves. And this guy literally refused to listen to my attempted explanations and just stormed off. Well, the next morning he was right there at opening time. When we had our pre-start meeting where sections were assigned, he interrupted our manager to say, "I'm putting myself with the original poster today. She clearly doesn't know how to handle handle the section, so I'm gonna show her what's what. There was an awkward silence for a moment before my manager went on with the assignments, and I just kept perfectly silent the entire time. Well, the district manager trailed me in my section and looked around. He said to me, "Well, what's first? Or don't you have a plan at all?" And before I could even begin to explain what was going on, I said to him, "Sorry, the cash register is calling for help. I'll be back in just a minute." I dealt with the tills, I returned, I got halfway through explaining the first job, and then I was called away again. By the time I got back, it was 15 minutes into my shift, and he still hadn't done any work yet. Now, I have to give it to him. He did stick it out the entire day. And eventually, I finally managed to show him what we were doing, and he worked his way up to the stockroom and down to the shelves half a dozen times. He ended up having to tidy up the same set of shelves because kids just love throwing things all over the floor, and watched as I was called away an average of 5 times an hour. And sure, I usually don't keep track of that stuff, but you better believe I definitely did that day. He took his lunch when I did, but 10 minutes late because of a refund. Now, he didn't apologize, of course. I mean, I was too lowly for that. But the next morning at the opening meeting, my manager announced that from now on, Boys Toys would have 2 staff as a matter of course, and that the managers would make an effort to be more available on the tills, which honestly should have been the case from the very beginning. Oh man, this is one of those situations where a district manager actually did their job properly. They followed around and they saw exactly what the problem was, and they fixed it as soon as possible. Like, in my opinion, I would lose my mind if I had manager duties and still was not a manager myself. Like, that's really dumb, and that really is super frustrating. But you know what? At least this kind of worked out to a certain extent, because your managers were clearly dropping the ball, and that is absolutely not your fault. My sister really thought that she could pay me below a livable wage just to move away from my life and take care of her child. Because honestly, I am blown away by what she just said, and I'm having a hard time getting over it. Here's how it all went down. Years ago, after my sister had her first child, she had a hard time with childcare. For reference, she lives in the middle of nowhere, an hour outside of her nearest big city. She wanted to hire a nanny to watch her child for 40 hours a week, but not pay them a livable wage. And she was complaining about this to me all the time. I told her I understood her frustration with childcare being expensive, but also was trying really hard not to validate her belief that someone should work full-time in poverty. It really just wasn't worth fighting over. "I can move you here for less than that to take care of him," with her implying that she would move me in from another state. Well, I immediately responded by laughing at her, and I said, "No, you couldn't," and simply refused to agree on that point while she sputtered and attempted a rebuttal. And this completely deflated her until she just changed the subject and it was never brought back up again. And I will say eventually she did find someone to help out. Now, I want to say that I'm child-free by choice, but there is honestly no amount of money that would ever make me want to become a nanny for her, because if this is the way she wants to treat people, then honestly, it's simply not worth my time. Oh man, this is such a bad look. Like, what's going on here? First of all, the fact that she's like, "Oh man, I don't want to pay them a livable wage. They should just do it basically for free. They can live in poverty and watch my kids. What's the deal here?" Like, don't lead off by saying that and then be like, "Wait, I can move you here and you could take care of him," because you already know for a fact she's not going to pay you a livable wage and you're probably going to be stuck there in some kind of way. Like, talk about completely shooting yourself in the foot. Like, what an idiot. So yeah, I think you dodged a train on that one, because your sister does not sound like a good person in the slightest. My entitled manager literally says that we will no longer get any overtime, resulting in my department falling apart right at the seams. Here's how it happened. Okay, years ago, I worked in a meat packing plant as a supervisor. It had its ups and downs, but overall it was good. That is, until a new production manager was hired. And for the sake of the story, I'll call him Bob. Bob didn't come from the floor or even the leadership itself. I mean, he had an engineering background, which I'm like, whatever, I'll try to keep an open mind. But unfortunately, my mind was only open for maybe about 4.5 minutes. On the first day in the first time meeting, he declares that he's going to right the ship. And it's like, okay, sure thing, boss. Right that ship that is already sailing in the right direction. It's here that he declares that going forward, there will be no more overtime. He states that we're throwing away money with the amount of overtime that we pay. I asked for clarification about like vacation coverage or sick calls, etc. And he replies by saying no overtime and there's no exceptions. So I think to myself, okay, sure thing, boss man. Now, I should point out, the department I work in is massive. My direct team at that time was 70 people. There were other rooms that other supervisors looked after for a total of about 220 employees. Now, I'm assuming all of you reading this are infinitely smarter than Bob and have figured out that with a team that size, we don't just get one sick call. We averaged like 7 per day. Vacations also meant that 10% of the workforce was cut off, which usually hovered to about 12 people a day. Not to mention the the leaves of absence, people leaving early, etc. So on Friday, I went to Bob one last time. I let him know that we were going to be short 19 people next week, and I asked him once more to please approve overtime. But I got a flat out no in response. I considered going above him, but I figured letting the guy drown would be a much better option. So I didn't ask for any overtime. Employees were coming up to me like, "Boss, are you sure there's no overtime next week?" And I just told him, "Yes, I'm sure. Bob wants it that way." Well, come next week and 2 production lines aren't running. Bob comes to me upset, demanding to know why 2 of the lines aren't running, as he's wondering if it's a mechanical downtime or something like that. But I say to him, "No, I don't have anyone to run the line." He then stammers something about staffing appropriately and having better planning, but I simply said to him, "I asked you multiple times to approve overtime, and you said no every time. I was just following your direction." Well, this is when he storms off angrily, with him yelling, "Get some people in here right now." Anyways, I then have to call people at home and schedule overtime for the rest of the week because Bob sunk our ship instead of righting it. And you know what? I simply couldn't staff those 2 lines that day. And for anyone wondering, not running 2 lines that day lost the company about $120,000. And no, I'm not exaggerating. Bob then gets a strip torn off of him by his boss, who is a guy that I've known at that time for about 10 years. He then came up to me and spoke to me about it outside while we were smoking. He said to me, "What was that guy thinking? I thought engineers were supposed to be smart." And I literally started choking. I was laughing so hard. Needless to say, Bob lasted about 3 months, and honestly, I was not sad to see him go in the slightest. Okay, I love this so much because holy crap, some bosses just don't know what they're doing. Especially if they're coming in and being like, "Oh, I'm gonna fix all the problems with this place. Just you wait, it's gonna be on me and I'm gonna take care of it." And it's like, okay, well, I'm glad you feel that way, but why on earth would you be like, "Yeah, we're gonna get rid of overtime," and think that's somehow gonna help anybody in the slightest? So yeah, I love the fact that the original poster just kind of let him sink this ship because it sounds like Bob deserved to be humbled. An entitled Karen demands that I give my ice cream to her crying toddler, and after I refuse to do so, she goes off on me and makes a scene. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female and I had to travel to a city 6 hours away for college-related work. The trip was pretty tight. I had to leave on Thursday night by train and reach the city on Friday early morning. I was engaged in work till the evening and then had to take the train to get back home on Friday night itself. When I got to the train at about 10 o'clock p.m., I still hadn't had dinner. And to be honest, I was completely exhausted. I just so happened to share my cabin in this train with this entitled Karen and her annoying spoiled child. There was around 30 minutes left for the train to start, so I went out of the train, quickly got some snacks and some ice cream, and got back into the cabin. I decided to have the ice cream first because I obviously didn't want it to melt. The annoying toddler saw it and started asking for it. I just looked up at the mom, expecting them to step in and tell their kid to stop. Instead, she starts barking demands at me, saying, "Give that ice cream to my son right now and buy yourself a new one." I was taken aback because she wasn't even requesting. She was literally demanding me to give her my ice cream. At this point, after the time I've had traveling all day and working, I was way too exhausted to deal with anybody's garbage from anyone. I continued having the ice cream and I told the woman, "The shop is right out there and they have all the flavors." The toddler at this point starts screaming and crying loudly. And so to offset the noise, I just put my headphones in and listened to some music. The mom then started yelling at me and started calling me all types of names. She said stuff like, "You're a brat. You're heartless for doing this to my child. You're trying to make me miss my train." And she went on like this over and over. Honestly, the other things that she said I couldn't really hear because I put my music at full volume. I did not feel guilty about finishing the ice cream in front of a crying toddler because at the moment, especially after she called me so many names, I was pretty upset. Not gonna lie though, I felt bad for the kids sometime later and did briefly think of offering them some of my other snacks, but I honestly just didn't want to engage in any form of conversation with this entitled Karen. The remainder of the journey was literally in utter silence. I told my boyfriend about this after I came back home, and he thinks the entire situation is absolutely hilarious. My mom, on the other hand, was not happy about this. She was more shocked than angry because I have always been great with kids, and she couldn't believe that I would do that to a kid even if the mom was annoying. But after some self-reflection and talking with other people, I've come to the conclusion that you know what? I didn't do anything wrong. I can also attest to the original poster that no, you didn't do anything wrong in this situation. What kind of parent would go up to a random stranger and demand their food when they themselves could easily get out of the train and go get it themselves? How entitled do you have to be able to do that? This original poster literally was running around all day trying to get stuff done, and the last little bit of happiness they had to look forward to, this entitled Karen tried to guilt trip them into giving to their toddler, all because they didn't know how to plan properly for a train ride. Because apparently this entitled Karen's lack of planning is somehow the original poster's emergency. So good for this original poster for standing up to this entitled Karen and refusing to cave into their weird demands. Because if this entitled Karen really wanted to feed her child, she would have taken the time to make sure she planned for this instead of trying to shake down some random stranger for their food. Today, I messed up by lying to my sister about crashing her car. For context, my sister, who is on a vacation right now, recently bought a new car, which she let me use to go to my new workplace. So today was my first official day at this place. So naturally, I'm very nervous. I get up at 6 in the morning to get there by 8 o'clock. To clarify, I'm not really a morning person, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So I get up, do my whole morning routine, make breakfast, walk the dog, and everything else that I normally do before work. When I check my phone, it's 7:20 a.m., so there is still plenty of time left for me to get there, or so I thought. I realized that when I checked the travel time, I forgot to account for morning traffic, so at this point, I'm almost late. I hurried along and ran to my sister's brand new car and prayed that I could get there in time. Luckily, nothing bad happens on the way there. But here is where I mess up. When I get to the gate, I have to press the bell so the gate guy can let me in. But I realize that I am just a little bit too far behind for me to reach the bell, so I get out of my car to press it. Easy, right? Well, not for me, because I forgot to put the car in park, and it remained in gear. So when I got out of the car, it slammed into the gate and messed up the front of the car. I panicked and decided to ignore the mess I made until I was done with work, all because this place doesn't allow you to use your phones, and I am already just a little bit late. Fast forward, and I finished my first day and left my boss happy with my performance. The only thing left to do now is to tell my sister that I messed up her car while she was on vacation. Well, here's where I also mess up. I call her on the way back, and until this moment, I don't know why, but I decided to lie to her and proceed to make up this whole story on how some dude must have parked into it in the morning and didn't even leave a note after he hit her car. So naturally, after being told this, my sister gets super pissed off and calls literally everyone she knows that can help and wrote into every single group chat and posted photos online so we can get some sort of info about the culprit. I start to realize how bad I messed up by lying, but I just kept making it worse by sending her more photos and making up even more lies. 2 hours pass since I have told her about the damage on her car when she calls me to go to the police station and file a report. This is when I realize that I have reached the dead end and I have to come clear. So I tell her what actually happened, and naturally she is furious and speechless at the same time. I called her an hour later and she tells me how disappointed she is in me and how she won't ever trust me ever again. And after everything else, rightfully so. This is really rough because if you had just been honest from the beginning, she probably would have been okay with it. Instead of this just being a private matter where you're like, hey, I'll help pay for the damages to the front of your car, you decided, hey, let's lie so I can get out of this. When in reality, you basically put yourself in a cage, and it was only a matter of time for you to realize just how trapped you really were. And your sister is 100% right to be upset at you at this moment. She wasted all of her time and energy trying to bring in everybody she's ever known into this situation so they can help look for somebody that doesn't exist. So this is definitely a lesson learned. It's better to tell the truth and own up to any mistake you made than to make up some ridiculous lie and then get caught in that lie. How do I tell my friends and family that I got back together with my ex who betrayed me previously? About a year ago, I broke up with my ex. I learned she had a secret friendship with her ex-boyfriend and she would call him several times a week on the phone. She was insecure and too weak to end their friendship, so she kept this going until I caught on. When I confronted her about it, she lied and gaslit me so much until finally telling me the truth about her ex. I broke up with her and I told all of my friends and family. They were shocked, of course, but they expressed that they think I could do better and that I clearly dodged something very toxic. I have been through several breakups in my life, and during this breakup, she was more remorseful than anything I had ever seen. I didn't tell anyone, but her and I continued a friendship for 8 months. I really wanted to see her get healthy, and she made so many steps towards that. She went to therapy every week for those 8 months and did a lot of self-reflection. I won't get into all of the details because honestly, that's an entirely different story, but I have seen genuine change in her from when we previously dated. I dated during those 8 months, but something just kept pulling me towards her. While we dated and after when we were just friends, I just couldn't shake this feeling that she was the one despite all of the drama. After a long friendship, we both came back together and realized we wanted to be with each other. We've been dating now for 4 months and everything is going quite well. The problem is that I haven't told any of my friends and family. None of them even know that we were friends, and some of them think of her as a stain in my past. I still don't know if I'm ready to let my friends and family know, but how on earth am I going to tell them about this? What should I do? I think your life is your business, honestly, and if you've seen some serious change in this lady, then by all means go for it and date her again. I think what you've explained in this story is exactly what you could explain to your friends and family should they question you on this relationship that you're picking back up. You can say that you've seen some serious changes and that you want to try making this relationship work again. Obviously, you can be cautious still and still have it in the back of your head, hey, this didn't work out the last time, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a healthy relationship and find some level of trust again. I also want to mention that both of you are close to 30 years old in this situation, and honestly, I don't think you have to explain anything to your friends and family, not for the most part. They don't get a say in what you can and cannot do with your life. They are literally just side characters in your main story, and I think it's important to remember that whenever making decisions. Obviously, you don't want to do anything that would negatively affect them, especially when it comes to family, but even then, if everything else fails, it's really none of their business. They can certainly stand on the sidelines and have their own opinions, but at the end of the day, it's your life and you honestly make the decisions on what you want and don't want in your life. Today, I messed up by telling my best friend that I loved her and possibly destroying our relationship. I've been pretty lonely most of my life. I've only had a handful of actual friends, and even then, none of them are people I'd actually trust with any of my problems, save maybe my oldest friend. We met when we were 10 years old, and we're pretty close. We're able to trust each other with personal issues, that is, until she had to move for college a year ago, where some distance was created, but we chatted every other day. I formed a bit of a crush around 12 years old, and it honestly just got bigger and bigger from there. Though I did confess to her at one point, she wasn't interested, and we were just teenagers at the time. Thankfully, nothing really changed, including my feelings, despite how hard I tried to bury them. Now she's on break for a month or two, and she decided to come back here for a handful of weeks to catch up on things. We actually trust each other enough that we originally planned for her to stay at my place, but since I would be busy with college work, she didn't want to bother me. We meant to meet sooner, but I was stuck with the aforementioned work, so we ended up meeting today. It was pretty nice. I picked her up in my car and we spent a lot of time together for several hours. We went to a movie, a restaurant, the arcade. Eventually, it got really late, so we got in my car so I could drive her back to her apartment. My friend was tired and very sleepy, to the point where she was zoned out in the passenger seat, and I genuinely thought she was asleep. I thought I had moved on, but apparently not. It was a pretty bittersweet moment, to be honest. Just driving on empty roads at night with the radio playing quiet music while she was sleeping next to me. I both wanted to grin so hard it would break my face, as well as burst into tears when I realized that I still loved her. I had to pull over for a second because I just couldn't stop looking at her. And in the heat of the moment, with me genuinely thinking she was asleep, I said, "I love you." I wasn't even sure I had said it, it was so quiet. But apparently I did, because she immediately shot up in surprise. I tried to backpedal, but there really wasn't anything to backpedal from that. She tried to say something, but she couldn't get the words out. I'm guessing just from the shock itself, but I doubt it was anything close to her agreeing that she loves me as well. Wishful thinking at best, to be honest. Afterwards, she just zoned out for the rest of the drive before silently getting out at her apartment building. I'm sitting in my car at an empty parking lot, and it's some ungodly hour of the morning as I type this all out. I'm really trying not to freak out because I just opened up a whole Pandora's box of garbage that hasn't been touched in nearly a decade since we were kids. Losing her as a friend will hurt 100 times more since she is the only friend that I've ever actually been vulnerable around. I don't think she'll hate me. She isn't that type of person and is way too kind for her own good, but I'm really worried that I just damaged our friendship in a way that can't be really fixed. It was my responsibility to bury this stuff, and I failed at that responsibility. Honestly, I wish I could rewind my life by about 3 hours and just kept my mouth shut, because I'm pretty sure I just ruined my friendship. relationship. I mean, talk about a really weird time to confess your love for somebody. You literally pulled off onto the side of the road, stared at her as you assumed she was sleeping, and said, "I love you." Sorry, but that's just super creepy. You should have done this in a better setting, in a better situation, because this definitely looks super sketchy. And if I was in her situation, I probably would have silently looked out the window and hoped this car ride would end as well. So next time, maybe consider the timing of this kind of thing, because the way you went about doing it is completely all wrong in my opinion. But despite how awkward the situation was, if she really is your friend, I don't think this is going to destroy your relationship. Friends do stupid and weird and awkward things around other friends all the time. And if she's anything like you've described, then she might be more understanding about what happened. You did at one point confess your feelings to her when you were both teenagers. And while yeah, that was a long time ago, it can hopefully account for the way you're acting right now. And honestly, even if she does not feel the same way about you, it does not mean the end of your friendship. So hold fast, take a deep breath, and just see what tomorrow brings. Because you might be surprised. It's probably not going to be nearly as awkward as you think it's going to be. My roommate takes my snacks and food without saying anything, and honestly, it's starting to drive me crazy. I'm in a shared accommodation with two other girls. We are all students, and this is a weird thing that's been happening that I really need some opinions on. We have movie nights from time to time, where we will either cook or order something to eat. I usually bring along drinks or snacks for us to have as well. Once the night is done, the leftovers I just put in the fridge on my side of the shelf for myself, but one of my roommates, who I will call Sarah, that's not her real name, will go into the fridge and help herself to whatever she needs without even asking me if it's okay for her to do that. The same thing happens with whatever snacks I may bring along on the day. Normally, I let it go, but recently something weirder has happened. We went for a hike as a large group and agreed for all of us to bring snacks. I drove all of us as she doesn't drive. I brought a whole bunch of things that I had cooked and also bought a bunch of chocolates and nice snacks from the shop. She brought a bag of popcorn and left it in the back of the car and didn't offer her food on the long drive to the hiking ground and spent the entire 3-hour drive eating more than half of the things I had cooked all by herself. On its own, I didn't care that much, but the next day, she asked for a ride from the university back to our house, and while in the car, she noticed that her popcorn was still in the car in the back, along with a lot of my snacks and chocolates, all of which were left over from our hiking trip. She picks up a bag and puts all the snacks in it and says, "Oh wow, lots of snacks are left over." She fills the bag up with all of it, talks about how much she loved the different types of snacks I had gotten, and then when we arrive, takes the bag full of snacks and goes to her room. She didn't even ask if she could have all these snacks for herself. Nothing of the sort. Instead, she just takes the bag and goes to her room. Is this normal? I don't want to be rude here and tell her off about the snacks, but I thought this was so inconsiderate to just take things without at least asking for them. I don't want to cause a hostile living environment for myself. Am I being the jerk in this situation? How do I communicate with her without causing a big issue or a fight? I'm stuck in this lease for another 5 months, so I need to communicate things without having a negative living environment. What should I do? It honestly sounds like your roommate is taking advantage of your kindness, and you really should talk to her about it and say, "Hey, that food was actually for me. I bought it, so it's still mine. Sure, you brought it as snacks for the whole group, but now that that trip is over, that food becomes yours again. It's not up for community grab anymore." And maybe they don't understand that. Maybe they thought, "Oh, this was snacks for everybody, so I can just rate it and have fun with it." Obviously, that's not the case, and they're clearly just taking advantage of that and saying, "Hey, I'm going to take it and run." So I think having an honest conversation the next time this comes up would really be helpful. I'm not sure there's anything you could do about the previous situation of them taking all your snacks and running to your room, but I definitely think there's ways you can bring this back up with your roommate and let her know, "Hey, I don't appreciate you taking my stuff without asking." And there's even a possibility here that your roommate might not know they're crossing a boundary. If they don't know they're doing something wrong that's bothering you, they might think this is okay. So explaining to your roommate that, "Hey, this is not okay," and that you would really prefer if they asked first before they start taking your food would probably go a really long way. Today, I messed up by telling my pregnant Catholic wife that I don't want to force our child into Catholicism. This happened minutes ago as I sit in the bedroom with my tail between my legs. My wife and I have been happily married for 2.5 years, and we've been together for almost 5. I am agnostic. That means that I believe in a God or a higher power, but I don't necessarily believe in any religion, but also don't discredit any religion. She was raised Catholic by both of her parents. I apologize in advance if anyone finds these words offensive or insulting. That is honestly not my intention. I would say she's not one that eats, breathes, and sleeps her religion. She stands strongly by her faith, but allows room for her own thinking. We almost never talk about religion because we respect each other's beliefs, and that's that. Therefore, it's never been a point of contention. However, she's 3 months pregnant, which is bringing up the religion conversations. So far, my wife has said things like, I'm taking our child to mass, getting it baptized, and it's going to Catholic school. I'm raising it Catholic. And overall, I'm generally just kind of like, whatever. And my attitude towards this is very relaxed because it's not my realm of expertise, but lately it's been bothering me more and more. Again, I don't have a problem with religion, but from my perspective, to force a religion on a child seems kind of selfish to me. I do love the guidance it provides people, but it's not for everyone. That's my take on it, at least. Today during dinner, she brought up how she wants to get a child's Bible and read it to our baby each night. In response, I said I would also like to read something to the child that details other religions as well, so it gets the chance to expand its horizons and think for itself. A bit of mommy's beliefs and a bit of daddy's mindset. That couldn't be harmful, right? I'd like for our child to make its own decision at some point on which religion it would like to follow. I thought this would go over fine, but nope, all hell broke loose. I did my best to explain this by using a dice as an example. If I put the dice in my hand and covered all sides except for the number 1, I said, this is what you want for our child. You want to show them this one side, but it doesn't know that there are other sides that exist. Through life experiences, they'll learn the other 5 numbers, but it's now become so partial to the number 1 that it doesn't care what the other numbers have to offer. All I want to do is expose our child to all 6 sides and let it pick its favorite number. And I should have known better than to bring this up to my pregnant wife, but she basically said, nope, not happening. The child will be raised Catholic until it's a teenager and can make its own decisions on their religion and faith. She then basically said, don't ever talk to me about religion again, and said that she wished she was never pregnant. I now feel so trapped and helpless regarding my child's development. As an agnostic, it really feels like garbage being looked down upon and not taken seriously by someone, especially my wife, that has comfort in their belief system. Apparently, I can't talk to my wife about it, so here we are, venting to a bunch of strangers. And honestly, I'm not sure what to do about it. This is a rough situation to be in because honestly, why did this conversation not come up before you had a child together? Like, both of you have very significantly different mindsets when it comes to religion, and you both have probably very different upbringings. Why didn't you decide, hey, this is the direction we're going to go with our child? I don't think talking to your pregnant wife, who's on the verge of having this child, is really the best time to try and have this conversation. But either way, I wish you the best of luck in getting this figured out, and hopefully there's not a lot of contention whatever you guys decide to do.
A Karen makes her 40-year-old son attack me in the middle of a pharmacy, so I use biological warfare to get revenge. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Here's the backstory. I work 24/7 in healthcare in a medium-sized hospital. This particular year, the flu shot everyone got missed the big one. As a result, everybody had the flu. Staff dropping like flies, either from having the flu or from looking after kids with the flu. Our department was running lean on staff already, so this wiped us out. As a dude with no kids who wasn't dying a slow sniffle death, I was suddenly in high demand to cover all the shifts. This resulted in a solid 21-day period of covering all the overnight shifts, which are 10 hours long each, with the minimum required rest periods. It sounds bad, but honestly it wasn't too terrible. Lots of flu patients in beds, don't really require my department too frequently, so I made lots of overtime without being worked to death. But that last week, the flu finally caught up with me. The symptoms were pretty mild though, up until my last overnight. Suddenly, all my symptoms were dialed right up. Mild sniffles, sore throat, to hacking cough, fever, blocked sinuses, and vomiting for the last 4 hours of my shift. Joy. One of the ED doctors was nice enough to check me out, diagnosed me with the flu, and with the added bonus of a bacterial sinus and chest infection. He wrote me a very generous sick note and sent me on my way with a prescription for antibiotics for the chest infection. So off I go to the nearest pharmacy before running home and hiding from the world for 72 hours. So there I am, waiting for my meds to be filled, aimlessly walking the aisles. If I sat down, I was going to go to sleep, with my trusty basket that is slowly filling with purchases one makes when sleep deprived and ill. Lozenges, nasal spray, those diabetic jelly beans, why not? And of course, a bulk mix pack of Band-Aids, cause the 500 I have under the sink might not be enough. But then I see them. My girlfriend's brand of pads are on special. The girlfriend I haven't seen properly in 3 weeks. Boyfriend points points could be earned here. I mean, what girl doesn't see the romance in a 12-pack of pads? I'm scooping those suckers off the shelf like a madman, a row at a time, but in my exuberance, I accidentally knocked down some of the wrong sort of pads onto the ground, wrong wings or something like that. Anyhow, I bend over and start returning the drop pads to the display when I feel a sharp jab to my shoulder. I'm a bit startled, with my face so gummed up my hearing is shot, and I didn't even hear anyone approaching. I come out, the crotch pad still in my hand, and turn to face an old lady, I guess in her early 70s. The old lady says,
Excuse me, I need some help finding some product.
I start shuffling to the side a bit so I'm not taking up the whole aisle, and I say, sorry, I haven't seen any product, the one that she was referring to. Then the old lady, being a bit huffy, says,
Well, do you think you could look for it?
Me, still not getting it, say, no, I mean, I'm just here putting these pads away. You could try finding someone that works here. I'm just shopping. Now, the old lady looks pointedly at the pads still in my hands, my hospital lanyard hanging around my neck, and my Noah's Ark like basket of goodies. Then she abruptly turns around and walks away. I just sort of shrug and go back to putting back the wrong pads. Thanks to a coughing fit, I'm still doing just that when the old lady returns with a man in his 40s. Are you the guy refusing to help my mother? I finally finish putting away those pads and turn around and face the 40-year-old son. The old lady is standing there a little behind him with a decidedly smug look on his face. I say, look guys, I honestly don't know where the product that you're mentioning is. I'm just here for my meds and I'm doing a little shopping. The 40-year-old son shakes his head a bit and then gets right into my personal space. The old lady shuffles forward with him, so now we're all too close for comfort in this cramped aisle. Look son, it's one thing to be lazy, but don't be stupid too. If you're gonna slack off, at least take off the evidence. And with that, he reached out and grabbed my lanyard with a hard yank. Now, my fellow hospital peeps will be aware that we wear breakaway lanyards so that patients can't strangle us. So I think he was maybe trying to give me a jolt. Gotta get those lazy Gen Y people to pay attention, don't you know? But all he ended up with was my hospital ID. Now at this point I'm getting angry. Certain swear words are about to get spoken, but abruptly, my body lets me know that I'm gonna sneeze. Like the good hospital pleb I am, my arm comes up so I can sneeze into my elbow. The 40-year-old son is still confused by the breakaway lanyard and sees this and thinks that I'm throwing the world's worst punch. He grabs my arm with his left hand and we share a brief look of confusion before my eyes start to cross. Now here is where my bag of cares, which is already depleted by weeks without a break, completely runs dry. I don't turn away like a polite person. Nope, I take aim. The sneeze is a big one. I spray the 40-year-old son with snot and saliva. The first salvo of sinus infection green paints his face and the second his coat. The 40-year-old son lets go of my arm and I kind of swivel so the third blast catches the old lady a glancing blow. I come out of the head rush you get after sneezing to see the 40-year-old son dry retching. I'm pretty sure my phlegm sneeze got into his mouth. And the old lady sort of just staring at me with her mouth doing that goldfish thing. My ID is on the floor. The 40-year-old son must have dropped it. So I grab my basket, and push past the 40-year-old son and the old lady. While they're still reeling from my biological attack, I turned to them and said, I already told you, I don't work here. I just have the flu. What kind of jerks harass someone with the flu? And with that, I bravely hid right next to the pharmacy desk until my prescription was filled. I really hope the old lady and the 40-year-old son enjoyed that flu season just as much as I did. But hey, at least I didn't puke on them, right? So, am I the jerk? This story reminds me of one we did a long time ago here on the channel where it also took place inside of a pharmacy, and in that case, the other people thought that the original poster was an employee because she was wearing scrubs. She was a nurse, and she was just coming to the pharmacy to pick up her medication, and she actually said it happens all the time. People constantly come up to her in pharmacies and think that she works there for some reason because she's wearing scrubs, I guess. But this story was way more extreme. They just assumed the OP here worked there because he was putting the pads away that were knocked over at the same moment that she came up on him. That and maybe the fact that he was just wearing this lanyard. But the only thing I could visualize the entire time the 40-year-old son was involved was Ash from Overwatch and Bob. I just imagine this old lady saying, Bob, do something. And I also don't think we've ever seen somebody use biological warfare as a counterattack to somebody grabbing them. The OP turned around and just let him have it, sneezing straight into his mouth so he starts gagging. And as one of the top comments said, revenge is a dish best served phlegm. So let me know if you guys think this revenge was justified justified or was I going way too far since he did have the flu? And jerk or not a jerk, and why? Before we jump into the next one, if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably gonna love Am I the Genius? Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for using the money that I won in a lottery to finance my own dream vacation across Europe and Asia? On my birthday this year, I treated myself to $50 in lottery tickets and managed to hit one of the huge $50,000 payouts. After taxes, I had $34,000. So I put $7,500 into my wife's car and put the rest into a high interest bank account. I'm planning to switch jobs in early 2020, but first, I plan to travel for the month of January and half of February across Asia and Europe. I have never had a proper vacation, unless you count weekend trips to Disney World for the kids, and I have really wanted to take the chance to go out there and explore the world. Well, yesterday, my daughter Emily and I were talking about the job movement, and the topic of the vacation came up. I told her about how I'm financing it with the lottery. She previously did not know about the winnings, and Emily went quiet before saying, instead of wasting 25 grand on a vacation, why not do something practical, like maybe spend $5,000 on a vacation and help your daughter not graduate with a mountain of debt? I told her that I'd be happy to co-sign loans for her, but I was only willing to pay in upwards of $10,000 of her education, the amount that I promised her and her brother when they were 13 to 15. She said even after paying that off, she's looking to be at around $29,000 in debt by the time she finishes school. I told her that really sucks, but I reminded her that I offered her community college as an option years ago when she was applying to schools, but she insisted that she didn't want to, quote, miss out on the prestige. She got into Dartmouth. I talked to her about how transferring was an option, but she ultimately picked that route. She brought up how the $10,000 I gave Jason, my son, was enough to completely pay for college plus some extra spending change because he got a state scholarship that paid for 100% tuition. She argued how it's not fair that I was essentially willing to pay all of his college but leave her with a mountain of debt. I told her that he'd be able to argue the same thing if she got more money than he did. Ultimately, the line I drew was that both children get equal amounts of money and I can choose how I want to spend my money, end of discussion. I thought it was over, but it turns out that she went and talked to my wife Amy about it behind my back. Amy tried to persuade me to make it a 2 to 3 week vacation as opposed to the 1.5 months I had planned. I told her the same thing I told our daughter, and then she got mad and said that I'm being selfish, using all of the money for myself, never mind the amount that I put into her car and the fact that she used all of a $5,000 inheritance on cosmetic surgery 4 years back. I told her this vacation was non-negotiable. Now I have 2 women in this household giving me passive-aggressive looks and eye rolls. I feel they're both acting entitled to my stuff. Am I really being unreasonable here? As an update, I'm not leaving my wife behind. She can go for 10 days. She can't take the full 1.5 months off though. So, am I the jerk? Before the OP out of the section where he said that his wife can go for 10 days, I was kind of surprised that he would go on a vacation this long without his family because that's not really something you hear happening too often. It's not that it's wrong or anything, it's just not very common. And I guess to be fair, the kids are not exactly kids, they're adults in college. But one of the responses that thought that everybody was a jerk said, might be an unpopular opinion, but you win $50,000 and decide to give chump change to your wife and decide to leave behind all of your familial obligations and go on an expensive vacation. I mean, even for a month and a half, $25,000 for a vacation is outrageous. Spending more is not going to make it better, and I think compromising with 15 grand for the vacation is perfectly doable. That being said, I don't think you should be obligated to spend that on tuition. In fact, I think it'll be unfair to your son. Put it to something for the family or maybe keep it stashed away for an emergency, but I think it's irresponsible to spend all of that on a single vacation. You're not a single man. You have responsibilities and a duty to your family. You chose that life. You can't just run away from that when it's convenient for you. The OPE responded to that saying it was really 34 grand after taxes, and I feel like you people are missing the fact that I bought my wife a car, and perhaps I should put an edit. I don't anticipate spending the full 25 grand on the vacation, though I wouldn't be mad that I did. I just want to make sure I have enough to do everything I want to do and see everything that I want to see. I think the person who responded originally has a point, where if they find out that their dad, the OP, gave extra money to the daughter instead of that son, that's going to probably feel pretty unfair to them because maybe the son also wanted to go to Dartmouth but went to the state school instead because he thought he knew what the rules of their arrangement were, and if he knew he was going to get more money, he would have tried to go down that path too. I can see how that would lead to a lot of resentment down the line. But let me know how you guys see this. Do you think it's justified that he spends his lottery winnings on his own personal vacation? mean? Or do you think it's wrong to do so and he should give the money to the daughter? Let me know your thoughts down below and jerk or not a jerk and why. A woman asked me to buy her some food for her and her family. I agreed, but she had way more in mind than I expected. She gathered hundreds of euro worth of groceries and put me on the spot at the register to pay for it all. It went badly. Here's what happened. So a couple weeks ago, I passed my local grocery store. We almost always have at least one woman in front of it begging for money. If I have the time and some spare change, I usually give it to them. That time I had no money at all, only my credit card, which I told the woman who asked me. She then begged me to buy her something to eat for her 5 children. I, trying to be nice, said yes. In my mind, I would go in and buy her some rice, noodles, or bread, something that could feed the family, but the woman stood up and came in with me. She only spoke very little and broken German, my mother language, so I didn't really understand her. Then she took a cart, which confused me, but I went with it. We went inside the store. At first, she put some normal groceries in the cart, nothing that I might have selected, but I was still fine with it. Then I started having doubts as she put about 6 packs of coffee in, saying, "For me." I figured that this grocery run was going to give me good karma for the rest of my life, so I begrudgingly didn't complain. We went to the meats aisle and she started putting an insane amount of sausages in the cart. It was then that I thought to myself that she couldn't possibly want me to buy all of that for her, and I tried to tell her that I wouldn't. She only shushed me. Shh, and in hindsight probably pretended to, didn't understand me. I safely assumed that she only wanted me to pay for part of her groceries and had some money to pay for the rest of it. That assumption was only strengthened by her lack of understanding of German, which led to her often asking me where things were in the store. That made me think that she only needed someone to help her shop. Yes, in hindsight, that was pretty naive, but trust me, it got much worse. We continued shopping and the cart filled. To understand the full audacity of what she was planning on having me buy, here's some examples. Shampoo, not only the normal one, but the extra ones for dyed hair, some beauty products, and last but not least, cigarettes. All of that was accompanied by large amounts of food. We then went to the cashier who scanned all of the items. At this point, I was sure that she had her own money to pay for all of it. Her and I, meanwhile, packed everything in several large bags. Then the moment came. The cashier announced 240 euro, please, and the woman pointed at me. I was absolutely shell-shocked. The situation was so unreal to me, I couldn't believe it. Immediately, I tried to explain that I couldn't pay for all of that and didn't even have that much money with me. The woman tried a few more times and then just suddenly disappeared from the store. I was left at the cash register with 240 euro worth of groceries, a steady line of people forming behind me, and so I did the only thing that seemed logical. I started to cry. I tearily apologized to the cashier, the people waiting in line, and the emergency supermarket workers called to carry away all of the food and explain the situation. Luckily, everyone was extremely nice and didn't see the fault in me, but I still felt sorry for them. This experience scarred me, but the craziest part is still the audacity of that woman. Sadly, there are some rude people telling me it's my fault because I offered to help her in the first place, etc., etc. I am 19 years old and I suffer from a social anxiety disorder. So saying no to someone is really hard for me and I have trouble voicing my opinion. So if you want to scream at me in the comments, please keep that in mind. With all that said, am I the jerk for not spending 240 euro on this woman's food? This has got to be an awkward situation. Standing there with all that food, cigarettes, shampoo, everything else they put in there, it's off when she realizes that you're not going to pay for it. I think for anyone, even somebody who doesn't have a social anxiety disorder, this would be a very uncomfortable moment. Normally, I would have said, while this whole shopping process was happening, why didn't you clarify or ask her or try and figure out what the situation was? But in this case, it was a little bit different. There was a language barrier which would make this difficult no matter how you do it. And the whole shushing thing really stood out to me too. One of the top responses says the shushing is the trick. These people use it as a tactic to establish a tipping point, suggesting that they are now in control. It's subtle, but it kind of works. I had a similar experience where I met someone in the street who stopped me and asked me for a few bucks, which I happily gave him. But then he established this authoritative tone where he began shushing me whenever I asked him to let me alone now that I've given him what he asked for. And he would then proceed to raise his voice and talk loudly about how I'm a bad Samaritan if I didn't pay him more to, quote, feed some children. So let me know how you guys see this situation down below and jerk or not a jerk and why. This is a private residence, not a Supercuts. This happened many years ago when there was a Supercuts in my hometown. Their phone numbers and our our number were almost exactly alike, except their last digit was different than ours. Now, ours had the same 3 digits in a row at the end. Think like 333 or 777, while their phone number was 2 of the same digit and then a 0, like 330 770. You get the idea. Which means it was very easy to accidentally dial our number instead of theirs if you were dialing too fast. At the time, answering machines weren't as prevalent as they would be a few years later. So when I was forced by my parents to answer the phone, instead of saying hello, I used to say our last name and then residence. That always seemed to get the people who meant to call Supercuts to realize they dialed the wrong number, and then I just say, oh yeah, theirs ends in a 0, just dial it a little slower. They thank me and hang up. My mom, for some reason, still insisted on saying hello instead of answering my way, which meant she often got people trying to make appointments for Supercuts. Now, I'd say 99% of the time they'd accept her from, oh, you've got the wrong number, this is our last name residence. They'd apologize and hang up. One time, a kid in the army called because he'd been on leave and needed a haircut before he went back. He was very disappointed that he called the wrong number. Now, mom happens to be a retired hairstylist and offered to cut his hair for free. She even told him where we lived and how to get there. I can't remember if he showed up or if he just decided to go to Supercuts instead, but one lady did not get it. She kept calling and calling and calling and calling. My mom was the one who answered the first time and every time after. The first time the woman angrily hung up. Then she hung up instantly every single time my mom answered the phone and said, hello. Finally, after what must have been a good 10 or 15 minutes of calling our house, she yelled at my mom and said,
Would you stop picking up the phone? I'm trying to call Supercuts.
We got an answering machine not long after, and a couple of years later, Supercuts had shut down that location, so we stopped getting calls for them. I know it's not the most dramatic story compared to some others here, but I thought I'd share this old childhood memory. I hope you all have a nice, Karen-free day. The first thing I wondered is why she would say, would you stop picking up the phone? I'm trying to call Supercuts. But some of the people that responded to this mentioned that this probably involved party lines, and somebody actually broke this down and gave an explanation. They said maybe she grew up with party lines. For the young, this was where there was a shortage of phone lines into rural areas. So they'd run the same line to multiple residences, basically like having an extension phone in your neighbor's house. Each residence had its own number, but there was only one physical line. They'd play tricks with line polarity or frequency to get it to ring only in one place, depending on which number you dialed. Or in some areas, they'd all ring, but with a different cadence. For example, if it rang 2 short and 1 long, it was yours. If it was 1 long and 1 short, it was the neighbor on the left, etc. Only one family could use the line at any given time, so there was a good chance you'd pick up the line, and instead of a dial tone, you'd hear some other person's conversation going on. You were supposed to hang up and wait, but often people didn't. You got used to never talking about private stuff on the phone. Somebody else also included a mini story where they said, my dad grew up with one of these, and he had the issue of a nosy farm wife listening to everyone's conversation. One time, he and his friends realized she was listening in. They switched to a conversation being entirely about gossiping on the nosy neighbor lady, and she immediately learned her lesson. So that makes a lot more sense as to why this lady would say that, and I didn't know they were running the same line into multiple houses back in the day. So let me know if you've ever been in a situation like this where somebody called your house thinking that you were someone else. And don't forget, you can always submit your own stories to be featured down below in the link in the description. A racist Karen thinks that she can order a Marine around, threatens the Marine, and then throws a glass at the Marine. This does not go over well and backfires brutally. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I was working Toys for Tots in the DC area, which is a program the Marine Corps runs every year to gather toys and gifts and distribute them to kids whose Christmas tree would likely disappoint Charlie Brown. Sexist or not, they seem to pick those of us who have the quote Marine look in the casting sense, tall/masculine, or on the ladies' side, that particular blend of I'll kick your butt with one hand while doing my eyeliner with the other hand. It's as much marketing as anything, especially in the DMV. Point being, we're a bunch of tall, very fit ukes out there in dress blues smiling and coaxing toys out of people who could have probably saved Toys R Us with petty stock stock earnings. We look nothing like wait staff. I myself am 6'1", 210 pounds, and another SNCO who's 5'4", probably 135 pounds were assigned to an event at the Smithsonian. Somehow the Corps had managed to get a display and a few donation bins put up at a black tie invitation-only shindig surrounding the display of the Hope Diamond and a bunch of other large hunks of carbon. Personally, I don't understand the obsession with it. It's a large, shiny rock. No one is wearing it. It serves no scientific purpose. It just sits there so you can look at it or something. I feel more satisfaction looking at an exceptionally big turd the night after Taco Tuesday. At least I made it myself, often with significant effort and no small amount of regret/self-loathing to provide fuel for the push. Anyway, we're smiling our pearly whites while the various movers and doers shake our hands, toys on display, posing for the cameras so their constituents/stockholders, etc. can see how kind-hearted they are. The sick thing is how many don't even donate. They just get a photo in front of the pile of toys sans the generosity. Pretty much par for the course. The initial wave of donations passes as the event gets down to business. Drinks are passed out and they start in with the hors d'oeuvres, and we're standing there surreptitiously munching and trying not to get those godforsaken white gloves dirty. When this lady, who's best described as a chubby mixed-race female Steve Buscemi, comes toddling up in a dress waistcoat thing that looked like it was screaming for mercy from the Button Fairy. Fat Steve Buscemi Karen said,
Hey you two, I'm dry here. Let's get snappy with a refill.
Something like that. We didn't realize she was talking to us, so I only paid half attention. Fat Steve Buscemi Karen, after a second of us not replying, said,
Hey, I know you hear me. Get your butts in gear. Flirting time is over.
At this point, we realized she meant us. I look over at Pocket, my fellow Marine's nickname. We call her P. She looks at me. We look at the lady. It took a second, okay? So finally I speak and say, Can I help you, ma'am?
Well, it's about time. I need a refill, and while you're at it, get me some of those little munchy things. They stopped bringing them out a few minutes ago. You guys should
Pocket cut her off to say, Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we don't work here. We're just here with the toys for...
I don't give a dang about what you think. Get your butt in gear or I'll have your job. I will not be talked to by someone like you.
Fat Steve Buscemi Karen proceeds to toss her empty-ish glass at Pocket, who gets some leftover drips on her blues but catches it out of reflex. I can see the thunderclouds gathering. A stain like that likely means she's looking at a new blues coat, which runs a few $100s. Probably a new ribbon setup too. Pocket is Puerto Rican and has the temper to match, so I try to head the lady off. Ma'am, we're not wait staff, we're just... Fat Steve Buscemi Karen interrupts and says,
I don't want to hear your excuses. Do you know who my husband is?
Fat Steve Buscemi Karen proceeded to put her finger right under my nose and continue the tirade. Apparently, hubby was a Southern Senator's main booster/campaign funder, so said Google, and would see to it that I'd, quote, be sleeping under newspaper. After about 10 seconds of this, we're starting to draw stairs and some of the staff were starting to head our way. However much I wanted to put this bee in a compliance hold, I could pretty well visualize the CNN article if a male Marine laid hands on a woman in front of all those people, especially a politically connected one. I was sort of at a loss. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to make that choice. Pocket made it for me. Ma'am, you need to calm down. Please take your glass and... She held out Fat Steve Buscemi Karen's glass to her as she said this. Fat Steve Buscemi Karen switches her wrath from me to Pocket and slaps the glass out of Pocket's hand. I could see Pocket's control wavering, but there wasn't anything for it. Fat Steve Buscemi Karen bored right in. The critical mistake was to start jabbing Pocket with her finger right in the chest with each word she said.
You shut your...
Insert racist word here.
Mouth!
I cringed visibly at that second to last word because, yeah, I knew exactly what was about to happen, and it did. It's called the udegatame in judo, basically a standing arm lock, and Pocket was a 2-tab black belt. Pocket snatched her arm up, locked her out, and slammed her face straight into the wall next to us. Blood, broken nose, drywall dust, the whole bit. Just that grin teeth smile that says, I'm gonna mess you up so hard hard that your grandkids will be born with my handprint on their soul. It was awesome and a little hot, to be honest. I, being both the senior Marine and somewhat cooler of temperament, carefully pull P back. I dare say it was akin to handling a small but very dangerous animal. Fat Steve Buscemi Karen kind of slides to the floor, actually much quieter now that she's trying to aspirate a mixture of blood and gypsum. Security finally showed up to help, which resulted in them hauling Fat Steve Buscemi Karen away and taking us to a separate room where we gave our version of things. Security recordings were reviewed, of which there were many, what with the fancy rocks everywhere and so on. Pocket wanted to press assault charges, but oddly enough, no DC police became involved. I'm assuming that politics were at play there. I called the head shed to let them know what happened. They sent a van to pick us / the toys up. Funny enough, it never seemed to make it to the news. I think that, more than anything, saved Pocket's butt. Upon coming back to the main event area to load the toys and take down the display, we were given a wide berth by many of the upper crusties. I feel compelled to mention the notable exception, this one old lady who came up and asked if she could give Pocket a hug of all things. Just kind of gave her that grandma style hug, patted her on the back and took her hands and said,
"You know, in my younger years, I would have stomped that whale flat. Wonderfully done, dear."
And then she wandered off to rejoin the party. It was adorable. So, how should we have handled the situation? Were we the jerks for taking it too far? I can't believe this lady threw a glass at Pocket. I mean, that could have easily shattered and gotten in someone's eye, or just cut someone. And maybe because of the power that this lady is in, because of who her husband is and where she usually is at, she's just so used to seeing everyone else there as just wait staff that she can treat like trash and order around, to the point that she doesn't even realize that these are Marines. I figured both the Marines here could very easily defend themselves against this Karen, but the fact that Pocket is a black belt in judo makes this even more wild. The top response to this was, "Surprise, Pocket sand," which is probably one of the best responses to a story ever. At the end of the day though, this Karen didn't end up getting in trouble at all. So clearly the power that her husband had was real to some degree. Otherwise, Pocket would have had the chance to press assault charges like she wanted to. But let me know how you guys see the situation down below. Do you think the response was justified, or was it going too far, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? Before we jump into the next one, if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably gonna love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for grounding my daughter for calling out how my girlfriend talks to waiters? I'm 47 years old and I recently began dating a woman who's 33 about a month ago, and this week I arranged for her to meet my daughter who's 12. We were going to a restaurant for lunch. My girlfriend does not particularly like interacting with waiters or waitresses, especially those at more casual dining places. She's had bad experiences with them and feels like they often judge her and other customers on her/their food choices. She's also sensitive to entitled attitudes on their part. So whenever she goes out with friends or with me, she prefers that someone else places her order for her and she does the rest of the interactions with the waitstaff, like handing them the paid bill, asking for utensils/refills, etc. So when it comes time to order and the waitress is asking my girlfriend what she wants, my girlfriend looks directly at me and I order for her. My girlfriend wants another fork in the middle of our meal and she asks me to ask the waiter for it. This triggers my daughter because the waitress happens to be within earshot and my daughter starts asking my girlfriend why she refuses to acknowledge waitstaff. I tell my daughter to be polite, but she continues on and says that when the busboy came, she could have at least thanked him for taking her soup dish away. She then says, "They're all human beings!" And it came out louder than we all expected, and the diners nearby stared at us. We end up cutting our meal short because my girlfriend was obviously offended and I drive home with my daughter. I told her that this was no way to treat a woman who I love and who I want to be a part of our lives. I end up grounding her for embarrassing my girlfriend in front of everybody. Am I the jerk? My daughter has grown up and needs to learn that not everybody approaches situations how she does, and that it's ignorant to just write them off as rude, or even worse, to raise an issue with them about it. Also, I have to add that she claimed my girlfriend is so rude and idolizes her late mother, who would regularly tip 30%. Yet she is the one who raised her voice in public. So, am I the jerk for grounding my daughter for calling out how my girlfriend talks to waiters? I mean, it does sound like your girlfriend is being rude to the waitstaff, even from how you're describing it. And if I had to choose if there was a positive or negative spin on how this was being described, I would assume it's a positive spin because the OP here thinks that him and his girlfriend are in the right. So in other words, there's a chance that this behavior is even worse than is being described here. To the 12-year-old daughter, she probably perceives this this as being sort of dehumanizing to the waitstaff, even though the girlfriend and the OP probably don't see it like that at all. They see it as her reaction to a series of bad experiences in the past. So let me know how you see the situation down below. Jerk or not a jerk, and why? A Karen thinks that I'm a lowly worker at the nursing home, and when I don't answer the phone for the place I don't even work at, she reaches out and snatches my arm while I'm in the process of moving, holding a heavy box, and it doesn't go the way she thinks it's gonna go. Here's what happened. So over the last few days, my mother and I have been moving my grandmother into a nursing home. It's been incredibly difficult, not only for my grandma, as this is a massive adjustment for her, but because at the best of times, she and my mother have had a strained relationship. This led to me doing the majority of the heavy lifting, taking boxes from the moving truck up the elevator down the hall to my grandma's apartment, and then flattening the boxes and garbage back down, just to get away from them for a few minutes at a time. On this particular trip, I was taking some old dishes that simply couldn't fit in the limited kitchenette, mostly metal cups and wooden bowls with a few broken dishes chucked in the bottom, all marked for the garbage. So I'm walking down the hall with a huge box in my arms, and off to my left I can hear a phone ringing. As I get closer, I can see a woman, definitely not old enough to be a resident, peering around to see what the sound is coming from. As I approach, she asks me rather snottily,
"Are you gonna answer that?"
I raise one eyebrow and give her a rather confused look. I'm clearly dressed nothing like the staff, who all wear scrubs, but friends, after 3 days packing and unpacking in the sweltering apartment, I didn't have much patience left. She was frowning at me so hard I had to say something, so as I walked by I said, "Sure lady, I'll get right on that," and carried on to the elevator. Karen whirls around on me with a
"How dare you!"
expression on her face and grabs my arm while breathing in, probably to tell me at maximum volume what a bad employee I am. I have already had enough of this woman's entitlement. I drop the box. The broken dishes inside shatter again. Karen is startled so badly she shuts up and takes a step back. I look at her evenly. It cannot be lost on her that I am angry and clearly on the edge of something. I didn't yell, but in a low, clipped voice, I say, never breaking eye contact, "I don't effing work here. I am not going to answer the phone because it isn't my problem. Now leave me alone." Her head was, by this point, as far back on her neck as possible, her lips sucked in. I maintain eye contact as the elevator dings and the door rolls open. I half push, half kick the box into the elevator and let the doors close behind me. So, was I the jerk? This one is more of a snapshot in time than an entire story. It's just one man on the brink of losing it after being frustrated throughout this whole process. Dropping the box was a nice little touch, since it probably seemed a lot more dramatic than it actually was because there were already a few broken dishes at the bottom of it. And obviously it didn't matter if anything broke because it was all marked for the garbage. So in a way, he kind of won this interaction by acting crazier than she could act, because who in their right mind would just drop an entire box of dishes, at least because that's how the Karen probably perceives the situation. But let me know how you see the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My best friend was cheated on by his wife and he is devastated. So I took it upon myself to get revenge on his cheating ex. Here's what happened. This one needs background to fully understand why I went out of my way for this revenge. My best friend was married for 10 years, with his ex for a total of 13 years. He was absolutely head over heels in love with her like I had never seen before, which I never understood due to her lush addiction to drink. She would take it out on him, and when he'd be venting about it, he'd always fall back on, "It's not her, it's the illness." A very respectable and admirable stance on it. Last year, she asked for a divorce because after years of him just taking it, he had simply run out of gas. Her reasoning for asking for one: when she got fired for testing positive for herb, he wasn't sympathetic enough. He admits that he wasn't because it had come on the back of one of her sloshed tirades where she told him that he was a piece of trash who was always trying to control her, when all he ever did was to try to get her away from drinking because of the way that she treated him when she was sloshed. It took him forever to move on from this, with a divorce following shortly after. And earlier this year, after thinking he was moving on, he calls me to come over, and he's in a bad way. I arrive and he is absolutely fall down level of sloshed, going on that she didn't ask for a divorce for those reasons girlfriends that she had really been cheating with several other people. The next morning when he's more coherent, I asked him how he knew. He was cleaning out the spare room and selling/donating stuff he didn't need anymore, and when he went on to clear an old tablet, she was still logged on and all the evidence was there. He gets that out and says that he's going back to bed and asks me to lock up when I leave. Before I left, I looked at the tablet. After seeing what I saw, I wanted to find a way to get even with the horrible and conniving woman, so I took pictures of it all and left. When I got home, I started looking up information about these people. Two of them were just normal guys. Whether they knew that she was married or not, I don't know. But the third comes up as a registered S offender, still on probation for being such a disgusting pile of trash and listed as 123 City Lane. This guy knew that she was married. I immediately knew what I was gonna do. Chromo was his name, and Chromo didn't live at 123 Lane. Chromo was living with the conniving ex. She made regular posts about their time together, and on top of that, she is an avid herb user and has several gats because she enjoys sport shooting. So I go into the state's offender site and make a report of Chromo not actually living where he's registered, and that Chromo is living in a home with what he has no right to be, being a convicted felon and on parole. I include screenshots of the social media posts to back it all up. I was thinking little would happen, other than an inconvenience to their lives. Boy, was I wrong. She broke her typical posts with nothing serious trends on social media yesterday with this gem.
My year can't get any worse. Chromo lost his job, and I am now facing eviction because I can't afford my rent.
So I go onto the state court system to see if it's related, and yes, it was. Chromo was rearrested. She clearly can't post bail or Chromo would be out. The job she took after being fired definitely can't support her lifestyle, so he's probably going to go back to prison or at least jail, and she's a breath away from being homeless. I don't know if I'd ever tell my best friend that I'm the one behind this, but he is definitely ecstatic to know that this horrible woman and sewer rat get what they deserve. Part of me wants to put up the offender registration link and that it's sitting in jail and say something to the effect of, it's a little more than losing a job, but not wanting to make my best friend's life harder, I'll just let sleeping dogs lie. So, am I the jerk? This is a dynamic you almost never see, a best friend getting revenge for their best friend's spouse cheating on them. For some reason, this happens a whole lot less often than one might think. And usually it's because people don't want to get involved in somebody else's situation no matter how close they are to that person. So it is a little surprising that the OP here took this upon themselves to go out and do all of this and really not even directly target it at the cheating ex, but at the cheating ex's partner. And obviously indirectly this did affect the cheating ex because she can't afford her rent anymore, but the other guy is directly back in jail because of this. Somebody responded with an interesting point to this, saying if you tell him, he may wind up feeling sympathetic toward her and taking her back. Don't give him the reason to feel guilt. To him, this was just karma catching up to her and confirmation that she deserves to stay in his past. So let me know if you agree with that sentiment down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. I have been bullied to my absolute breaking points. A group of guys keeps calling me names and then did the unspeakable act to me, the one that starts with R. I was unjustly accused of a crime that I didn't commit and was punished for it. I was forced into labor all night long outside while it was less than 10 degrees. When they found me out in the field the next day when the sun had risen, I snapped and unleashed my revenge on everyone. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This is my story. I finally feel like I can talk about this particular time of my life and appreciate what it took. Here's the background. This pro-revenge took place when I was in high school in the mid-2000s, a time in my country when there was much public outcry over bullying and hazing in boarding schools. A couple of students in different schools had died from injuries resulting from bullying. Other schools were rioting and burning things. They were under increased scrutiny. It was a whole thing. Personally, my life in school was not fun. I was a fat boy with very low self-esteem going into my first year. The bullying I received led to a depression. I was prone to recklessness and a bit of undoing myself ideation. The thing that made high school particularly nightmarish was the extreme bullying due to my orientation. Low-key comments about my orientation from this group of about 5 boys led to situations where they called me and my best friends gay. The social stigma associated with being gay here is really extreme. These boys would stalk and terrorize terrorize me. They left threatening notes under my sheets that would say, "We're going to mess you up for being a gay," and even a note that says, "We're going to do the unspeakable act to you that starts with R." So I had only one close friend who knew what was going on, and ironically, after an entire term of convincing everyone that I was gay, this same group of people began doing things to me that they were bullying me for in the first place. I'll spare you the details, but my first year in high school was the worst time of my life. But you're not here for my sad story, so moving on. Sometime in the middle of the term, the vice principal of our school was changed due to the aforementioned public backlash from the bullying scandals. The previous vice principal was a decent man, but the new vice principal was not. He came with a well-earned reputation of being unnecessarily harsh, dishing out suspensions and expulsions like candy on Halloween. That brings us to the last straw. A few weeks after the new vice principal came in, and I'm having an incredibly terrible week that is really battering my mind. Yes, all the bullying and all those things that group of guys were doing to me was still going on. But every Friday night, a group of kids used to climb through a window into the computer lab and play video games. The windows had bars on them, but a slim person could fit through. I am not slim by any definition, unless the definition of slim is fat. Among this group of kids was the troublemaker dude in my class and my dorm with the same common name. It turns out the vice principal had confused the two of us, and I was the one who was in his crosshairs. That Friday, the kids were caught. Some of them, including my namesake, managed to escape. The vice principal was called in and the students who were caught snitched. Security was sent to the dorms to bring the other culprits. Cue me being woken up at 3 a.m. and dragged to the scene of the crime to endure a punishment for something that I hadn't done. Corporal punishment was tactically legal then and now. My explanation that there clearly is no way for me to fit through the window were met with more canings. What really pissed me off was that the vice principal had us bring our belongings to his office at night for an inspection with the excuse of searching for stolen computer equipment. He came across my very private journal and, like the jerk he was, proceeded to ridicule me for having a diary in front of the other teachers, watchmen, and the students that I was bundled in with. It didn't help matters that I broke down and cried in front of them. I don't think I ever felt so much humiliation in my life before. The following morning, we were suspended for 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, my parents took me back to school. I had only told them of the mistaken identity that I suspected and the wrongful accusation. They already knew about the bullying. I didn't tell them about the vice principal going through my diary or the things that group of guys was doing to me. I was still writhing in humiliation. The vice principal, being the absolute jerk that he was, had convinced himself that I was the ringleader of this group of boys. Again, mistaken identity, and thus deserved extra punishment. He ordered me to clear out large patches of weeds outside and overgrown grass between the rugby patch and the hockey field, about the size of a football field, only using a slasher. Just as I'm about to head out, it starts raining and it's the middle of July, so there are much colder temperatures, regularly dipping to below 10 degrees Celsius at night. So instead of going to the field, I head to class to wait out the rain. A few minutes later, the vice principal barged in furious, interrupting the geography lesson. He proceeded to tear me a new one, even mentioning my private journal, and he threatened to expel me if I left the field before I finished my punishment. Mind you, this was one of the best schools in our region. It had actually been my first choice. He then proceeded to cane me again just to make his point stick. At this point, I just broke. All of his punishment was due to something that I had not done. I was completely innocent, but this jerk just couldn't listen. The ridicule, the humiliation, the bullying, everything all just came to a head at that point, and I decided to just say to hell with all of it. So I walked out into the rain, slasher in hand, with not even a sweater. This was about 4 in the afternoon. I never returned. I think the vice principal never really expected me to complete the punishment, but then I doubt he had ever met someone who decided they had no more cares left to give either. My initial plan was to crucify him with his own words. Dusk fell with me, cold and drenched, ripping up ferns from the ground. By midnight, I was shivering and crying uncontrollably, and it was too dark to see anything. I still persevered and started blindly cutting the grass, driven by this mad desire to just hurt. I really didn't care who I hurt. Sure, a part of my motivation was that if I did get sick out there, the vice principal would be in a ton of trouble, but there was another part of me that was just like, why not? Life sucks anyway. By midnight, I was too cold to continue. I ran out of energy and just sat down under a tree. Towards dawn, I was so cold from the rain and the wind that my shivers began reducing. It was impossible for me to sleep. The teachers finally found me there a couple of hours after dawn. Apparently, the teacher on duty had found my desk empty during the morning study time between 4:30 and 6 a.m. When he asked where I was, it came out that I had not been in bed since the previous night either. He then called the vice principals and the other teachers, who began searching the school, and they finally found me in the field. This is where the pro-revenge begins. I don't know much about what happened immediately after. I was so out of it. I do remember the teachers rushed me to the school nurse, who immediately recommended I be taken to the hospital. I spent a week there due to complications. I got pneumonia, and a very expensive week it was, all on the school's dime. My parents were pissed, and I couldn't blame them. The school's board of governors convened after my parents contacted them. The days before my parents and I were called in to speak before the board, I had the idea to just face my fears and put everything out into the open. I was just done with that school and everybody there. So on that day, in front of a group of musty old men in the boardroom, I finally shed my burden. I told them everything. My only motivation being to bury the piece of trash VP, the vice principal, and my tormentors. I don't think I've ever done anything that scary before. From the mistaken identity, the suspension, the punishment in the rain, the threat to expel me if I decided to seek shelter, and the crown jewel, the bullying, and everything that group of guys had done to me in private, I laid it all out. I knew that would definitely get their attention. The board called my best friend, who backed me up. The vice principal was in no position to win a he said, they said contest with us at that moment. The vice principal was fired that day. A few days later, a zero tolerance policy on bullying was announced. I think the board was actually afraid of finding themselves in the news for all the wrong reasons. They didn't want their school to be one of those schools, despite the fact that it was one of the worst. Over the holidays, my friend told me that things got really serious after that. People didn't know why, but suddenly any act of bullying was met with an immediate and unconditional expulsion. As for the boys who had been terrorizing me, they were arrested. My dad went to the police with those threatening notes that I had been receiving all year long. The school board supported us in this on the condition that we, my parents and I, do not take the story to the media. I was happy with that arrangement. I had no desire to be the face of male R-word victims. We had a few meetings with an investigator from the public prosecutor's office. A couple of months later, the office reached out, told us the boys had pled guilty. One of them got off scot-free because his dad was a senior army guy. Sounds like corruption, shake my head. But 3 of them got 10 years each. The last one got 18. The topping, they were all in their 4th and final year. They got arrested just as they were about to sit for their national exams to go to university. Their lives are ruined, and I have absolutely no remorse for them. So, am I the jerk? This story was so intense that it's hard to imagine how somebody could have survived all of this. And I think at the end of the day, the original poster here's saving grace was that all of this happened to take place during the time when there were all these bullying scandals. So the school and everyone involved had no choice but to take this seriously, or else they would face what they would consider pretty serious repercussions. I'm assuming losing funding would be the first of their many problems. And you could tell that that was clearly the case, because when they made the deal with the original poster here, they told him they would take care of everything, but only under the condition that he would not go to the media. So in the end, they were still looking out for themselves above anyone else, even more so than looking out for him. It's pretty sick to see that one of the guys that did all this to the original poster here got away with it, and that's all because of who his dad was, whereas everyone else in the group ended up getting locked away for years on end, over 10 years for all of them, besides the one that got away with it scot-free. Doing something like that to someone deserves the harshest punishment, not just walking away from it like nothing happened because of who your dad is. So I don't see any way that any part of his revenge was unjustified, especially because it led to them getting locked up. It led to the vice principal losing his job. But let me know how you see this. Do you think his revenge was justified as well? Or do you think it was going too far somehow? And jerk or not a jerk, and why? Before we jump into the next one, if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably gonna love Am I the Genius? Check it out, link down below in the description. I know a woman who may be the dumbest person alive. Don't believe me? Listen to this. So I've had a friend since college who's a great guy. I love him to pieces, but I've occasionally considered ending the friendship because his wife is so jarringly dumb. For the life of me, I do not know what he gets from her. Okay, I do. She's one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in real life, but even still, I don't know how he does it. She's sweet, she means well, but there are sandwiches more intellectually stimulating. A while back, I had a friend visiting, Camden, and she was dropping her kids by to hang out with mine. I invited her to stay for a bite to eat because yes, she's exquisitely dumb, but she's perfectly friendly. Camden's been trying to break into acting, and he recently had a big part on a TV medical drama, so I brought it up saying Camden just recently had a small role as a doctor on this show. She went, "Oh, that's so exciting. Congratulations. That must not be easy to get a job there. So what kind of doctor are you?" And he explained, "Oh, it was a very minor role. I didn't get a specialty or anything. I didn't even get a name." And she laughed and went, "Well, we all feel that way when we first start, regardless of what job. Just keep working hard and you'll get all that stuff over time. But don't sell yourself short. It's not easy to be a doctor." And he took the compliment and went into how he went about playing the role, the body language he tried to adopt for the intensive care unit, that sort of stuff. Then she cut him off and went, "Actually, you know what? If you wouldn't mind, my son actually has this oblong cyst developing on the small of his back for a couple of weeks now. I'd really appreciate it if you could take a look." So we both laughed, thinking that she was joking, and I was impressed with her uncharacteristically high-level joke. But then she actually started to call her son over. It's just like her to start a funny joke and then take it way too far. Camden, confused and weirded out by the whole thing, started saying, "Oh no, they didn't teach us any medical stuff for the part. I can't help you with this." I jumped in and changed the subject, but she left shortly after. I'd long since given up on trying to explain to her why some jokes are funny and other jokes are not. So I thought I'd let it be, even though she seemed kind of miffed when she left. Later, she came back to pick up her kids, and by then Camden had gone home. As she was leaving, she remarked, "You know, it was very rude of your friend to not at least look in my son's cyst. It would have taken him 10 seconds. I hate how doctors think they're above helping anyone unless they're getting a check. Didn't they take an oath to always help out anyone who needs medical advice or something?" So as I processed the pure bitterness in her voice, I realized that she genuinely and truly thought Camden was a medical doctor. So convinced I must be misunderstanding her, I further reiterated, "No, he's an actor. He played a doctor on that show. You've seen the show. And for the record, it's not a small production. It's like Grey's Anatomy or House. Everyone knows it." And even angrier now, she said, "Of course I have. I know all about it. It's one of the best hospitals in the country. Why do you think they put it on TV? Being in the spotlight like that, you think he'd try and be a little more professional with people. That's all I'm saying." The surreal mix of entitlement and delusion in her statement left me dumbstruck, and I decided I must be misinterpreting this somehow, because there was no way any grown adult who votes, drives, works, and has kids of her own is that stupid. Not even her. So I just let her leave rather than risk offending her or embarrassing myself. As soon as she was gone, I called my friend, her husband, to try and catch him before he was home. I relayed the whole series of events to him, and his response? "Oh, that. Yeah, it's a problem, but not entirely her fault. Oftentimes, those shows use stories ripped from the headlines of the actual news, you know? So you can see why she gets mixed up sometimes." She bumped into Camden at my anniversary party not too long after and asked him with genuine concern if a character on the show who'd been in an accident again on the show was recovering well. He tried telling her in plainer terms, "I don't work there. I'm not a doctor. I just played one that one time." And she said she was so sorry to hear that he'd been let go, and where was he working now? So if you wonder how our country ended up where we are, know that she has a bachelor's degree from an accredited college with several subordinates and partial responsibility over our city's water supply. So advocate for education reform whenever you can and enjoy these twilight years of the great American experiment. I can't believe this is actually a real person, but it seems too specific not to be. There's even more the OP adds on about her, saying other top highlights of hers include remarking on how it's a sign that God loves America best above all others because fireworks always happen on the 4th of July. She thought fireworks were a natural phenomenon like the northern lights or volcanoes, stubbornly insisting on eating an actual rose, not icing a real rose off a cake because if it's on the cake, it must be edible. And lastly, calling poison control after taking baby aspirin because it's for babies, not for adults. I hope in the future this OP writes more stories about this lady because in some weird way it's kind of fascinating to see her perspective on the world that we all live in. The OP thinks she's really dumb, but maybe she's actually enlightened. So let me know if you guys have ever met anyone like this in your life, and if so, what happened? And don't forget, you can submit your stories via the link down below in the description. I called roadside assistance today today, and this is what happened. I blew out a tire while driving this afternoon, pulled off the busy road to a side street to assess the damage and start working on replacing the flat with the spare tire from the trunk. It turned out that the lug wrench provided in this particular car was absolutely tiny and thus provided very little leverage. Try as I might, I only managed to loosen one of the 5 lug nuts holding the tire on. No problem, I thought, as I have roadside assistance coverage on my auto insurance. A short call later and my insurance has dispatched a local service provider and I receive a text that Daryl from the local provider will be arriving at my location by 2:34 p.m. That's less than a half an hour wait, so I'm pretty happy. At 2:33 p.m., a van approaches and the driver waves at me and pulls over. The driver immediately hops out with a toolkit in hand and we exchange brief pleasantries and I explain my problem. The driver smiles and tells me the same thing happened to him just last month and says not to worry about it. He takes out a proper wrench, I hand him the jack/spare, and he has my car back in operation in about 6 minutes flat. It was at this point that the conversation got a bit muddled. I asked him if he needed anything from me, like a signature to ensure that he gets paid, and he responds that no money is necessary. I tried to clarify my question and explain that I have roadside assistance on my policy and that my insurer got him dispatched to me and that I think they will pay his employer for the service call. His response? Oh, no one dispatched me. I was just driving by and thought you could use some help. So you're not Daryl? Nope, Brian. I can't believe that I handed this guy my jack and just watched him crank up my car while lying frozen on the pavement. I don't even remember how many times I apologized. The guy wouldn't even let me hand him some cash. He just left in full cheer and told me to pay it forward. In the aftermath, I waited another 10 minutes for Daryl but gave up and left after finding his employer's phone number and canceling the help request. My insurer had been sending me automated texts all day along the lines of, "Has your service provider arrived yet? Reply Y if yes, N if no. Has your service been completed yet? And how likely are you to recommend this service provider from 1 to 10? I can't figure out how to respond in such a way that nobody gets in trouble or over/underpaid. Anyway, thanks Brian. The fact that there's actually Brians out there in the world helping people out when they're in situations like this is pretty great to see. We always see stories of people trying to scam each other or try to hurt each other, but every once in a while you just get a good guy like Brian to show up. I've seen a couple of these videos where guys will go out and do this and then try and record it, and the people always seem flabbergasted when they won't accept any cash. Like they think that it must be a scam if they're not taking cash in that moment. So let me know if you've ever been in a situation like this yourself, or maybe you are the Brian.
An entitled Karen goes crazy on me after I banned her son from our store after he stole from us. And despite being shown the videotape footage that he did it, she still wasn't having it. Here's what happened. For context, I work nights at a gas station, and this happened a couple of days ago. About a week ago, 2 young men come into the store who are semi-regulars, as in I've seen them a few times before, but not often enough to know them. They came in around 2 in the morning and pulled a runner on me with around $30 in drinks and snacks. As I'm not allowed to chase shoplifters, I do what's required and I leave a note for my boss so she can pull the tapes and post the pictures for us so we can tell them to get out if they're ever stupid enough to come back in. You wouldn't believe how many thieves actually are, in fact, stupid enough to come back. These 2 morons in particular fit the bill. Fast forward to 2 days ago, and wouldn't you guess it? I'm working my only weekly day shift, and who should walk in but my pair of stupid thieves? And who do they have with them? One of their mothers. I immediately buckle down and tell them they need to go now. This is pretty much how the conversation went down. I looked at them and demanded that they needed to leave right now. Both of them looked incredibly confused and said, "For what? We didn't do anything." I responded by saying, "You know exactly what you did, and you're banned from the store. You can leave on your own 2 feet or leave with a police escort. Your choice." They leave and go back to the car, waiting for them at the pump. From the window, I can see them talking to the woman in the driver's seat, gesturing and pointing. She gets out of her car and storms into the store. This entitled Karen looks at me and says, "Why did you tell my son and his friend that they can't come in here?" I look her square in the eye and say, "Ma'am, they ran out with nearly $30 in products. We do not allow thievery, and they are absolutely banned from the store. You are welcome to come and get what they need, but if they are seen on the property again, the police will be called. Much to my lack of surprise, this entitled Karen did not believe me. She said, "No, my son is not a thief. How dare you? Get me a manager." I told her that I would gladly do that. What she doesn't know is that my manager has less patience for customers' garbage than I do. Since the store isn't very big, she's already heard this exchange from the office. I bring out my manager and she says literally the exact same thing I did. The Karen says, "That's a bold-faced lie. My son is a good young man. You're targeting him and his friends for no reason." The manager then says, "Oh, well, you're more than welcome to come back and watch the tapes yourself if you don't believe me." And much to our surprise, the Karen says that she'll do just that. She then says, "And once I have proof that you're lying to me, I'll be expecting that this piece of garbage to be fired." In this metaphor, I'm the piece of garbage, by the way. My manager brings the entitled Karen into the office and I tag along for fun. Being the assistant is both part of my job and a joyful experience to watch this entitled Karen's face fall apart when she finds out her good young man is a dirty, rotten thief. My manager plays the tape and the entitled Karen's son and his friend, clearly identifiable as their only means of disguise, was their school track hoodies pulled over their hair. To add icing on this beautiful cake, they had their names on the back of their hoodies, which are the same hoodies that they're wearing in the car right now. The entitled Karen was too stunned to speak at first, but eventually she remembered how to be an entitled Karen and stormed out, shrieking that she would be calling corporate. Thankfully, they never came back, and honestly, we're still waiting for that call from corporate. What an absolute psychopath. What kind of parent in their right mind would in any way, shape, or form act like this? There is obvious evidence that your son is an absolute thief. They pulled a runner, ran out of the store with a lot of product, and now they're getting banned. If I was the store owner, I absolutely would have just called the police, but these people are a lot nicer than I would have been. So it's so good to see Karen justice come the way of someone who absolutely deserves it, because people like this are the worst you're possibly going to deal with, and watching their Karen resolve fall apart is truly a joy to witness. My friend views me as the other woman instead of a romantic relationship, and I'm so heartbroken that I simply don't know what to do. I met this guy a week ago, and we clicked pretty immediately and became very close. I had feelings for him, and he later revealed he had feelings for me. He's been in a very on and off relationship with somebody else for a while, occasionally seeing other people in dips, and basically for this reason, I didn't tell him I felt the same way at the time. I continued to try to suppress my feelings until for some reason they got a lot stronger, and I eventually told him I felt the same way a few weeks ago. His relationship with this other person was more so on standby for a bit before I told him, but I think I was somewhat aware that things had changed by the time I told him and that they were closer again. For a brief bit, this didn't bother me, but once the days of us both openly having feelings for each other left, it sunk in more that I was the other woman, for lack of a better term, and that I was secondary in this situation. We had a conversation a bit ago over text message where he basically in passing laid out how much this person meant to him, and then later, also in passing, referred to me as the third party. None of this was new information, of course, but hearing it laid out like that finally made me internalize it. I guess I fully knew I was secondary in general, but I hadn't really processed that I really was secondary emotionally. It kind of hurt to realize that, even though it wasn't necessarily new information. I've also now begun to feel guilty about my role here. Before, his description of his relationship was more so that they're just talking and not a couple. But the more I think about this, the more I feel guilty over it. To make things more clear, my friend and I are not involved in any sort of relationship right now, and we're still just friends, and for the most part, just talk as friends, except when this subject comes up. Now I don't know what to do. I feel like rationally I need to revamp my efforts to suppress my feelings, but it's just so difficult. I really do not want to stop talking to this guy, because outside of these feelings, we're also just really close friends, and easily the closest friend I've ever had. I've been able to compartmentalize my feelings with him before, and I believe he's able to do the same for me. So I believe it can work, but I just don't know how to go from being open with each other about our feelings to then having them be a non-factor in our friendship again. And the most difficult part is that in all actuality, I don't want to suppress them again. I just know it's what I should do and perhaps the good thing to do, which is ultimately what I should be listening to. But it just feels so easy to linger in whatever's between us now. What should I do? This is definitely a tricky one because I can definitely see where you're coming from with this. You found someone that you like and they've expressed their feelings as well that they like you. Unfortunately, it looks like the timing was really off for both of you and things didn't quite sync up. And now you feel like, oh no, I have to suppress these feelings again and I'm not sure that I can do it. And in my opinion, to be honest, I think you need to give yourself some distance from this guy. I know this can feel like this is the one that got away in some ways, but I think you need to look at this realistically. He's made it very clear, even if it's just subtle, that he wants to be with another woman. He does not want to be with you. And while I understand that that's completely heartbreaking and not the thing that you want to hear, it is objectively the truth that is happening right now. So give yourself some distance and allow yourself to get out of this fog, because you're going to feel like this for a while if you keep revisiting it over and over again. And you're only doing yourself a disservice by hanging on to this and trying to feel like there's some hope that you two can get together. Because honestly, from what it looks like right now, I don't think that's going to happen. You can kick yourself and say, man, I wish I admitted my feelings when he admitted his feelings for me, but at the time you were really confused and you didn't have it all together, which honestly is not unusual and it's totally normal. I also think it's really important to understand that he does not view you as a priority. I understand that you've got feelings for him, but he does not at this point anymore have feelings for you, and there's no reason for you to try and latch onto that. I wouldn't want to be with someone who viewed me as a secondary option. I would want to spend my time and focus on someone who is actually going to care about me first and foremost, and it sounds like this guy is not going to give you that. So in my opinion, give yourself some distance, and if possible, move on. That doesn't mean you don't have to be friends with this guy, but it does mean that you can start looking for somebody else who's going to show you the love and attention that you deserve. My boyfriend hid a huge thing about his past with his ex-girlfriend, and I don't know if I can ever trust him again. I've been with my boyfriend for just over a year now. He has a son with his ex-girlfriend that he never married, and they were breaking up when she found out she was pregnant. They tried to be together for their son, but she made it difficult and apparently was a horrible person. And trust me, it all got confirmed later that she really is. I just went on a week-long trip with my boyfriend and his family, and his mom told me about all the terrible things that she put him, his family, and everybody else through. She basically befriended them through social media and pretended to be all friendly just to get information on them. Then the second she didn't get what she wanted, she started harassing my boyfriend, his parents, his former girlfriend before me, as well as her family non-stop, until she took things way too far and started threatening people. They all told her that they kept a binder full of all of her harassment statements, and that if she continues, they'll take her to court. This was all linked as well towards getting custody of my husband's son, because the way she was acting was incredibly crazy. So it sounds like they were doing anything it took to get this lady to leave them alone. My boyfriend's mom also told me that his dad had been trying to convince him to take her to court so she can only communicate with him and everyone associated with him via a parenting email as well as an application. So there would be no calls or any text messages unless it's some kind of true emergency. His parents honestly don't trust her to try and not ruin his future relationships. And now that we're dating, his mom warned me not to exchange numbers with her or to engage with her at all. His mom is afraid that if we let her in, she's going to try to harass us too. This crazy ex-girlfriend also started messaging his mom again to try and be close to her after she found out about me. So my boyfriend's mom thinks she's doing this on purpose to try and weasel her way back into the family and to annoy me. So here's the issue. I'm really upset my boyfriend never told me about any of this. About once a month, every month, I'd ask him about what really happened because my gut kept telling me I'm not getting the whole truth. He would always tell me that she was difficult and made it difficult for him to spend time with his former girlfriend before me. And because of this crazy ex-girlfriend, they ended up breaking up as well. He also told me that he, as well as his former girlfriend before me, dated for 3 months. But then I found out through this story that he was with her for about 8 months. I just feel like he had a year to tell me about the harassment, because here's the thing. I would not have dated him in the beginning if I knew there was any kind of serious drama there, and a possibility that the rest of my life with him might be full of complete and utter drama. He knew I wouldn't have stayed with him if I knew about what was going on, which is why he said he didn't tell me about it. I feel like now I can't trust him to be honest with me about any possible drama, starting with this crazy ex-girlfriend, all because he hid it from me from the beginning, just so I wouldn't leave him. And I feel like if he could keep this from me no matter how many times I asked about it, then what else could he keep from me? If it was so easy for him to lie to me just to keep me around, then what else will he lie about? He has put up so many boundaries with her from the beginning. When she started harassing him every time she knew we were together, she would fake emergencies so our dates would end early. She would also blow up his phone with messages when she knew we were together. I almost broke up with him then because I didn't want the drama in my life. But then he apparently told her if she continues to harass him in an attempt to ruin our relationship, that he'll take her to court with a whole binder full of harassment that his mom kept as well as printed out. She has apparently stopped to my knowledge, and he's done everything to make me feel comfortable about everything in our relationship. And I do have a close relationship with his son, but I just don't know how to get over this feeling like I can't trust him anymore. It seems like such a small thing, but it was in fact that he hid all of this from me and lied to me just so I wouldn't leave him. And that makes me feel like I can't trust him to tell me the truth about things he thinks would upset me. What should I do? There are quite a few red flags in here that you gotta be aware of. The fact that he left out information about this crazy ex who has a huge role in harassing him as well as his family is a big red flag in my opinion. It's not outright lying to you, but it is lying by omission. The fact that he isn't telling you about this, also he can keep you in a relationship with him, is super sketchy to me. And with his track record, he's had other girlfriends walk out because they couldn't handle the harassment. And I mean, honestly, who would? I would lose my mind if I had someone all over me like that, harassing me left and right and trying to ruin my relationship with my boyfriend, all because they're crazy and have some kind of weird vendetta against him. And sure, when you're dating someone who has kids, there's obviously going to be drama that comes along with it, especially if there's some kind of weird ex. But this is at a whole nother level. So if I was in your shoes, I would not blame you for not trusting your boyfriend, as well as saying, hey, you know what? I don't think this is what I want my life to be. And it really sucks that you have a good relationship with his son, but in my opinion, there's way too much baggage that has come along with this relationship that you were not told about in the beginning, which to me is a huge red flag and kind of a deal breaker. But that's just my opinion. What would you do if you were in this situation? Leave a comment down below. We would love to hear it. My boyfriend lied to me for 2 years about his education, and I'm seriously not sure what to do. I don't know where to even start. My boyfriend of almost 4 years has been lying to me about his education. He lied to me about getting his master's degree, and now about being in a PhD program. I guess he wasn't able to finish due to his grades, and didn't know how to tell me or his parents for the past 1.5 years. He just told me today that he's going to transfer his credits to another university and finish up there. I feel betrayed because I don't know why he wouldn't just tell me the truth. I would have supported him no matter what. I still love him and I want to support him, but I feel scared to trust him now. I'm not sure how to proceed. I don't want to leave him, but I don't know how to move on. I have gone through a wide range of emotions because of this. I've asked a lot of questions and I kind of understand why he did it. I understand the shame and the guilt that he carried that stopped him from coming forward. He has already started applying to other programs and genuinely putting in an effort to communicate how he's feeling. I don't think I was upset about the schooling portion more. I was, however, upset about the fact that he didn't tell me and thought that I would leave him if I found out the truth. It's upsetting that he didn't ask for help. I turned to him at my worst times and got help, and I am sad he couldn't do the same. Again, I absolutely do not want to leave him, but if I stay, does that mean that I don't respect myself? I don't think it does. How do I ensure he understands that lying is unacceptable and that his actions are not condoned by me despite me staying? Other than this instance, he is a loving, caring, kind person with a huge heart. He is extremely smart and very capable, but fell into this deep depression recently, all because of this situation. He really is my best friend, and I'm not sure what to do. I think it's fantastic that you want to stand by your boyfriend during this really rough time where he lied to you for 2 years about something that is so silly to lie about. But with that in mind, there's some big red flags here you definitely need to address. In my opinion, it's one thing to lie out of reflex to avoid difficult conversations or situations that might be difficult in some way. Those, in essence, are forgivable for the most part, in my opinion. But this man lied to you for 2 years about having a master's degree as well as being in a PhD program, both of which are incredibly difficult to get into. I think you should totally stay with your boyfriend if that's what you want to do and work on this relationship, but I think you need to set some very clear boundaries between the both of you that lying is absolutely going to result in you leaving him. Lying about something like this for 2 years, in my opinion, is absolutely unacceptable. And this is a big lie at that. I mean, he was lying about being in a PhD program. That is not something you just step up and say, oh, I'm going to get into that. That takes a lot of hard work, all of which your boyfriend lied about. So I wish you the best of luck in moving forward with this. And hopefully he doesn't lie to you anymore, and hopefully he's a lot more open and doesn't make this mistake ever again. My boyfriend's mother is ruining our relationship. I'm not sure where to start with this one. My boyfriend and I bought a house in December. His mother does not have a home of her own, but lives with his brother 18 hours hours away. His mother used to live around here, but was not happy here. She moved 18 hours away because that's where grandbabies were and she wanted to help them. Her son was happy to have her help with the kiddos, so it's all been good, except once again, she isn't happy. She has now thought it upon herself that she was going to move in with us for 6 months and then back with them for another 6 months. She is not happy anywhere and is actually quite rude to them. I have seen it with my own eyes. This is not something my boyfriend and I ever agreed to. Neither of us want someone living with us, especially a 70-year-old woman who is unhappy and constantly complaining. So we had a conversation with her that we would be happy to have her, but not for 6 months, just for 2 months, which is still too long for me, by the way. But I get it. We can handle that. Now she's talking behind our backs to people saying she is not welcome at our house. Now her best friend has called me upset with us, and I don't believe it's any of her business, and I kind of wish she would butt out. I do not know what to do here. I am going to have the conversation with her if she brings up staying longer, that I will help her get her own low-income apartment, but I know that that will not go over well. She is in great physical shape, by the way. She could easily be independent. How would you handle this? Are we just being difficult? What should I do? I want to let you know for a fact that the second she moves into your house, she will not be leaving in 2 months. She's going to stay a lot longer. She's going to complain. She's going to be nasty behind your backs in your own home, and you will never get rid of her. So no, you are not being unreasonable for gatekeeping when and how this lady comes into your house. And for me, the fact that she's talking badly about you behind your back is the best red flag you could have possibly hoped for. That to me would be my golden ticket to uninvite her and tell her flat out, if you're going to talk trash about me and my husband, guess what? You can find another place to live. You are not responsible for this lady's happiness. You said it yourself. She is very independent. She could figure this out herself. She's not some feeble old woman. So the fact that she's trying to do some weird power play by guilt tripping you into letting her stay longer is absolutely ridiculous. So in my opinion, I say stand your ground and tell her to get lost, because you don't have to put up with that kind of talk and you have no obligation to try and cater to her every need. My friends expect me to keep a secret from my spouse, and I told them that that is absolutely unreasonable and that I won't do it. I'm a 27-year-old female and I'm married to my 27-year-old husband. I was having a debate with my single best friend and we still haven't reached a conclusion. The conversation started with my best friend saying, "If I told you specifically not to tell your husband something, then I expect you not to tell him." And I responded, "I don't think that's a fair expectation. These are all hypotheticals, of course. She's never told me not to tell my husband something, and she'd probably tell him herself since they're really good friends. Here's what I think personally. I feel like ever since we got married, my husband and I share everything with each other, whether to seek advice or comfort or whatever. My husband is great friends with all my friends, and if anyone ever said, 'Don't tell your husband something,' my first thought would be, but why? I also think it's unreasonable for any of my friends to expect me to keep things from my husband. I would rather not know whatever the secret is than to try and keep it from my husband. Also, it's because my husband and I have mutual trust, and we're not sharing whatever it is with other people, just between us. I also want to add that that doesn't mean I'll run to my husband immediately and tell him something that's going on. I think in this case, context matters. If a friend of mine ever said something that was really embarrassing involving their personal health, I wouldn't then go to my husband and tell him all about it. But for example, if they confided in me that they're having problems with their boyfriend, I would possibly talk to my husband to get maybe a male's perspective, or even just to ask advice on how to help my friend, or just to privately vent if my best friend isn't listening to my advice and still allowing themselves to get hurt. Again, I think these are just conversations I have with my spouse, and it stays between me and him, and that's it. But my friend has a different perspective. She thinks that if she specified for me not to tell my husband and I do it anyways, then that means I'm in the wrong because it wasn't a secret that I should share. And to an extent, I think that's valid. But again, I'd rather not know the secret in the first place if it's going to be like that. I've also asked my other married friends this same question, and they all mention that they do speak to their spouses about things because it stays between them and maybe they just needed some help. On the other hand, I asked some other single friends and they all stated that they would side with their friend. So somebody help me out here. Is this a married couple versus a single person thing? I feel like I should be able to share anything with my husband and that my friends honestly don't have a say in that. If I was in your shoes and I knew for a fact anything I tell my significant other is going to stay between the two of us, then I would absolutely share it with them. I think keeping things from your significant other is very toxic and has no place in a relationship personally. Obviously, there's context to everything everything and there's stipulations for all sorts of situations. But generally speaking, across the board, I absolutely would share information with my significant other. I am married to this person. I am with them for life. There's no way I'm going to treat that lightly. I personally would want their input as they're the person I trust the most. It would be different if I knew my significant other could not keep secrets and would in fact turn this around into something weird. If that were the case, then the situation would be much different. But in my opinion, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But what do you think? Leave a comment down below. What would you do if you were in this situation? My entitled cousin's children caused $10,000 worth of damage in my home, destroying priceless items that I hold dear, and now they are all banned from my house. As I mentioned in the title, this deals with my entitled cousin and her spawn when they visited me in my partner's home. 2 years back, her children stole several video games and a tiny treasure chest that was filled with Sacagawea coins. Because of that initial incident, I banned them till I got my stuff back. She refused to bring back my stuff as they told her that I gave it to them, which honestly is an absolute lie. I would never give that to those kids. Fast forward to this last Christmas, and she comes to my party uninvited. In the first 20 minutes of them rolling up at my house, her kids jumped up, stood on, and busted my original NES system. They broke my custom Venetian blinds, destroyed the grill on a 1928 radio, drew all over my coffee table, sat on a broken camel saddle and cracked it further, even though I asked them not to, explaining that it is absolutely broken. And then to top it all off, they were caught sword fighting in the kitchen with my kitchen knives. I just about had it, so I screamed at them that they have to go and that they have to leave this house. And at this point, we hear another crash. Her youngest child, about 7 years old, decided that I'm not allowed to yell at his mom, so he shattered my jade dragon on my fireplace. My partner got fed up at this moment as well and announced that he has called the cops on them. At this point, they get in their car and quickly leave. The cops eventually showed up, but my aunt and uncle who were at the party refuted this story to the cops, as they didn't want my entitled cousin and her kids to get in trouble and possibly arrested. And as a result of that, they also have officially been banned from my house as well. So now we're on the 4th of July, and my entitled cousin wants to borrow my house, all with me not being home by the way, for her 4th of July party that she wants to run. And after all the damages that she as well as her kids have caused in my house, I said no. Though I did offer that if she gives me a $10,000 damage deposit, I would happily accept, as most of, if not all of that, would be used to repair my house and the priceless items her kids destroyed. She ends up just calling me names and hangs up the phone. Now she called back to let me know that I apparently owe her, so that means she should be allowed to host her youngest birthday party at my house. You know, the kid who shattered my dragon. I reiterate that it's a $10,000 deposit, and again, much of that is going to be used to repair my home. So she calls me names again and hangs up. At this point, my aunt tries to get involved and tells me how horrible I am, but honestly, at this point, I just don't care. I am simply done with my family. None of them will ever be invited back to my home. I'm happy to live my life with my partner and to never deal with my family ever again. What kind of parent rolls up uninvited to a party and then lets their kids run rampant all over somebody's house, doing $10,000 worth of damage in their home, destroying priceless things that meant a lot to these people? Honestly, if I was them, I would have called the police as well. There's no way I would let anybody treat my valuables like that for a second. In my opinion, if there's toxic people in your family, you have every right to cut them out and get them away from you. They don't respect you, your space, or your property, so there's no reason for them to be around. I don't care how nice they have been or how nice they will be, it does not ignore the fact that there was some serious property damage that needs to be accounted for. It would all be a lot different if some of this damage was an accident. Like, I can understand that kids play around and they mess around, so they might bump into something and unfortunately break it. But these kids were intentionally going off the walls, without any kind of discipline from their entitled mother, by the way, destroying everything in their path. So good for this original poster for deciding to cut these people off, because who knows what kind of damage they would do if they really did have their party while they were not there. Am I the jerk for being upset at my ex-fiance for them marrying another man without telling me? My ex and I have been in a relationship for about 3 years when I asked her to marry me. We had our occasional arguments, but all in all, it was actually a very loving, supportive relationship, and she seemed really happy when I popped the question. She excitedly excitedly said yes, and for a while everything was great, and we were on top of the world. At some point though, I think she started getting cold feet and doubting whether she wanted to go ahead with the wedding, which she never really communicated with me, but I could tell that she was becoming more withdrawn from me, and she seemed to avoid talking specifics about our getting married. I didn't want to see it, but in hindsight this was a clear red flag that something was off, and sure enough, she broke off the engagement a couple of months later. There were a lot of hurt feelings on my end because I hadn't changed my mind on wanting to make her my wife and spending the rest of my life with her, but I accepted her decision and we decided to move on as friends. After all, we still cared for each other a great deal. Obviously, staying friends after a breakup is easier said than done, but initially, it worked as well as could be expected under the circumstances. I was still nursing a broken heart, but we regularly caught up with each other and talked about everyday stuff without things getting tense or weird. We even regained some of the closeness that got lost at the end of our romantic relationship, which was confusing in a way, but still was very nice. A few months later though, I noticed her becoming more aloof again, much like the change in her behavior during our relationship. And since we were now just friends, I didn't feel like it was my place to confront her about that, and so I just let it slide, hoping that it was just a phase and that we'd find a more stable balance in our friendship eventually. Fast forward another month or two, and out of the blue, I'm getting a notification on social media that she changed her status to married. This is less than a year after we broke up, and she hadn't even told me that she was seeing someone else, even though she had ample opportunity when we were regularly talking to each other on a friendly basis. It felt like a massive punch to the stomach, seeing that pop up during a casual late-night browsing session. I honestly felt sick to my stomach all week, and just so you understand, I'm not mad at her for marrying another man. Yes, I feel hurt that she moved on from me so quickly, and I think it's not wise to marry someone less than a year after you started dating him, but that's her right and I'm not disputing that. But the fact that we were ostensibly still friends, and she didn't even mention this major life event to me, you know, the man she was initially going to marry, and that this is how I had to find out, feels like a huge betrayal. I'm so upset at her for blindsiding me like that. In a way, it's even worse than being broken up with. She told me I was acting entitled and possessive, but I feel like she's gaslighting me. Is it so crazy that I expected her to give me a heads up? Not to get my approval, but just to make sure I didn't have to hear it from someone else, or on social media in this case, because I never would have done that to her, not in a million years. So what do you think? Am I the jerk in this situation? The way you're acting in this situation is just absolutely unreasonable. She does not have to report every aspect of her life to you specifically. She is not beholden to you. She does not want to marry you. In fact, she broke up with you. But for some reason, you're hanging on to her like a leech, expecting her for some reason to tell you everything she has planned. Like you are not getting married to this woman. She is not obligated to have you in her life. Also, she was bound to move on eventually. Did you really think she was just going to stay friends with you and stay single? Because from the way you're describing it, it sounds like you're almost hoping she'll come back to you. And from the way you're acting, it kind of seems like this is why she didn't tell you in the first place. She was probably concerned that your reaction would be an overreaction. But I think what might be worse in this situation is the fact that you think her getting married to somebody else without telling you first is somehow worse than being broken up with. That is really toxic behavior, to be honest, because you have no say in what she can and can't do with her life. So honestly, I think you need to work on yourself, and I think for your own happiness, I think it's time to move on and find someone who will want to be with you, because it looks like your ex-fiance has obviously moved on with her life. And from the looks of it, I don't think you have yet, and I think you'll be a lot happier when you do decide to do so. I am very allergic to my boyfriend's cat, and I'm afraid he'll choose the cat over me if he has to, and I'm not sure what to do. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2.5 years. We met abroad and are planning to go to his country and stay there. He has a cat that's been staying with his mother for about 3 years now, ever since he left his country. The problem is that I'm very allergic to cats. It's not a life-threatening situation, but it does make me extremely uncomfortable. And the worst part is, medications do not help. I have tried everything. I know he had the cat for around 7 years prior to him leaving, and the cat was with him through some tough times, and he loves it very much. When we talk about moving to his country and living together, he always wants to live with his cat. I said I will do anything to make this possible, as well as trying some anti-allergy treatment if I need to. What I am afraid of though is what if the treatment doesn't work? When I try to talk to him about it, he gets very defensive and says, "I'm not giving up the cat or you." But honestly, either me or the cat is going to have to go if these treatments fail. He never reassures me, and I wish he would say that if everything fails, the cat could stay with his mom, as she only lives 5 minutes away. But he never brings up that option. He just keeps repeating that he will not give up his cat. I feel like he cares more about the cat than he does about me, which is really disappointing. I feel like I offer to do all I can, but there is a chance the treatment will fail. He does not want to talk about that possibility. And when I push, he just says that he doesn't want to lose either of us. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid to move to his country, as well as to try the treatment, only to then gamble on if it's going to work or not. It also makes me so angry that after 2.5 years together, planning our life together as well as a family, I cannot get a reassurance that if everything fails, he will choose me over his cat. I don't know. Should I keep pushing the issue, or should I let it go and hope that if the time comes, he will choose me over his pet? You are about to move to another country with your significant other, under the assumption that he is going to love and protect you, as well as try and keep you in his life. If I was in your shoes and there was any doubt in my mind that my future husband would pick a cat over me, there's no way on earth I would move to that country. I'm not about to uproot my entire life just for my significant other to kick me to the curb for some cat that's probably going to die in 5 years. That is a financial obligation that I am not about to make, all because my significant other isn't giving me a straight answer. So personally, I think you need to have a very serious conversation with your future husband and say, hey, we need to figure this out. If the treatments fail, the cat has to live with your mom. She lives 5 minutes away, so it's not like you wouldn't be able to see the cat. I mean, it's not your fault that you're allergic to the cat, and that it's going to be incredibly uncomfortable to try and live with a cat that you're allergic to. You honestly can't help that, and you're doing everything you can to make things more tolerable. But if the treatments don't work, you need to make sure that your husband isn't going to pick the cat over you. And I honestly, in my opinion, from my perspective, would not move forward with moving to another country until I know for a fact that my future significant other is going to be loyal to me. My husband has cameras installed everywhere, and I'm not sure how to convince him to get rid of them. I am a 23-year-old woman, and I'm originally from Belarus, but I've been living in Warsaw, Poland since I was 16. And that's where I met my husband, Brandon. He's 33 years old, and he's an American who was temporarily living and working in Poland. We met last year and got married at the beginning of this year because his contract was coming to an end, and he would be coming back, and we didn't want to get separated. We were able to move to the United States in June. I was under the impression that Brandon lived in a city. That's what he always talked about. But when we arrived, we were picked up by his father, and we drove over 2 hours to their house. They live in a very rural area with almost nothing around for miles. I don't drive, and I don't even have a driving license. I didn't need it when I lived in Poland because of public transportation, and so I'm not really getting around anywhere. So I have to rely on him, his father, or his stepbrother. I thought it was just a miscommunication, or that we will be moving soon, but Brandon said that this is where we will be living. It's a huge old house that we share with his father and his stepbrother, as well as his uncle. The property is very run down, and they have a farm with farm animals and a place that they butcher them. I want to find work, but because I don't drive, I can't go anywhere, and he didn't like the idea of me getting my driver's license so soon without knowing the country, so he suggested that I just get used to it first. I've been feeling very off about everything, but he dismissed my concerns as culture shock and told me that I would get used to it. I was alone in the house one day and was cleaning up the place when I found a hidden camera. It was very small and not obvious at all, so because of this, I started looking, and I found one more in our bedroom and bathroom, as well as another one in the kitchen, and before I had time to look for more, they came back, so I had to stop. I confronted my husband at night when we were alone in the bedroom, and he told me that the cameras were for security. It's a rural place and we need them for protection apparently. I told him I understood, but I said that it left me feeling very uneasy, especially with them being in the bathroom and the bedroom, and I asked if we could remove them or at least make sure they're not facing the bed and that I would know where they are. And after asking him this, he said absolutely not, saying that we needed cameras where we were living and basically demanded that I stop snooping around. I told him that I wasn't snooping and that I don't want a camera in the bathroom. He said no one but him and his family has access to it and told me basically to stop worrying about it. And that is when I freaked out and I told him I want them gone right now. In response, he just laughed at me and said they're staying and that's the end of the discussion. And then he left the house to go to a bar. I tried to continue the topic, but he called me emotional and told me to know my place and to stop being an ungrateful jerk. And that honestly hit me very hard. I did only just arrive and am now making demands, and I might be unreasonable here, but how do I convince him to get them removed? Or should I just suck it up and appreciate the new house? What should I do? This sounds incredibly sketchy because no rational person should have cameras in the bathroom or have cameras facing the bed. That's just weird if you ask me. This does not sound like a healthy relationship, and it honestly sounds very dangerous for you in many ways. I personally would not want to stay with somebody who's violating my privacy like that, and to be honest, this is a massive red flag, a dangerous one at that. And the worst part about it is there might be something very serious going on that could put you in a lot of danger. Think about it for a second. He brought you from your home country into a place that you weren't expecting and has cameras set up all over the place that you did not know about. That's like 3 strikes already in my book. If I were you, I would dump this guy as soon as possible, find some way of getting a ride back into town, and get out of there. Because this does not sound safe, this does not sound like a good relationship, and I really think you can do a lot better than this. My husband is really jealous that my mom keeps buying me things all the time, and I'm not sure what to do about it. So my mom really shows her love by buying things, and she's kind of always done this. She just really loves giving gifts a lot. I sometimes even tell her that it's okay, you don't have to buy us stuff, but she does it anyways because she wants to. Anyway, I can't stop what my mom wants to do. She lives by herself, has hardly anyone in her real life to talk to, and all of her family is in Fiji while she lives in Australia. So she never sees any of her family, and she only talks to her sister on the phone and her best friend from another city. She only has a few friends and hardly sees them, and to top it all off, she's divorced. So my dad and his family don't see her at all ever. My brother does live with her, but he is either out with his friends, with his girlfriend, or at work, so she is lonely a lot of the time. She asks me to hang out all of the time, and I've hung out with her so much in the past couple of years, since I've been back in my hometown. Recently, we have spent a lot of time together, as nothing will be the same anymore because I'm about to give birth within a couple of weeks for the first time. So I have spent a lot of time with my mom, just because I know this time is about to be taken away from me. She has bought me a lot of things, always buying me lunch when we're out, buys me some groceries here and there, and gets me clothes as well. She's not super rich, so she doesn't buy me every single thing I ever need, but she does give me a lot of gifts. She has even made a huge hamper pack with lots of things our baby will need when he's born, and she makes us hampers randomly, sometimes like housewarming gifts, for example. She brings fruit and other food for us when she comes over, and always sends me home with lots of random groceries that she has spare of in her house, and always pays for dinners when I'm going to her place. When we're at the shops, she buys me random things if she has the money, so she is overall a very giving person. My husband's mom has not bought him a single thing since he was 14 years old, and still never brings him even one thing when she visits. She even made him pay for her and his stepdad's food, as well as food for his siblings with his own work money as a teenager, and he had to go buy the groceries himself and cook it. When he moved out, nobody helped him, and he has bought everything for himself. When he started talking to his dad again for a few months, his dad offered to pay for our internet one time, and would have helped him more if he was still here. He did unfortunately pass away. So that's the difference between us. My husband has mentioned that he is jealous when my mom buys me so many things, and he always kind of acts jealous and feels bad, and I just don't know how to not feel guilty. I feel bad for him that his mom doesn't do this for him. I just don't know how to act when my mom buys me things. Today, because the baby is almost here, I didn't have much grocery money, so my mom took me grocery shopping. She has bought lots of things for my husband too, like nice birthday gifts as well as random gifts overall, here and there, and I usually share the snacks and the food my mom makes or gives me with my husband. Sometimes she even pays for his lunches as well. Basically, I just feel more and more guilty because he looks and acts jealous, and I just don't know what to do. It just feels like I can't act happy, and when my mom buys me things, I end up feeling guilty instead, and it's just a cycle on repeat. What should I do? I think your husband really needs to grow up in this situation. This is really ridiculous. He's getting upset that the house is getting food as well as gifts for the baby. Like, it's not your fault your mom is trying to be kind and step in where his mom is clearly lacking. Like, motherly kindness and love is a basic thing, and there's nothing wrong or unusual about you getting gifts or some kind of grocery money or anything in between, especially when you're about to have a baby. Because right now, instead, he's projecting all of his problems on you and making you feel guilty about getting things from your mom, which is just ridiculous. So in my opinion, I would flip the script. I would spin this in a way and say, hey, this is a gift for both of us, and really try to lean into that. But I really would not feel guilty about this situation. You can obviously be sympathetic to his feelings without feeling guilty, because in my opinion, you should not be made to feel guilty about having a happy, healthy relationship with your mother. And honestly, he needs to see that. My partner keeps spending my money that I'm trying to save up, and I just don't know what to do about it. So I am 24 years years old and my partner is 25, and we've been together for 6 years now, and in the last year, she's developed this terrible habit of spending money that isn't hers. It started with rent money. I would give her half of my rent, and she was supposed to add her half and give it to our landlord to pay the rent. About a year ago, she stopped paying the rent and would just go and spend the money I gave her on God knows what. When I found out about it, we had a massive argument, but in the end, the problem got solved and she stopped doing it. A couple months ago, I went to buy something on my credit card and it got declined. I checked my account and the $500 I had on there had been spent, and I obviously freaked out, thinking that somebody had stolen my card. I asked my partner if she had seen it and she asked me why. I told her and she explained that she had my card and had indeed spent the money. I was absolutely furious, to be honest. And to be honest, I kind of still am upset. Money is not exactly tight and she has no reason to steal money from me, especially from my credit card. Then today, I check my savings account because I'm saving up for a business expense, and I look and find out that there's $100 missing from the account. She had taken my card again and spent $50 putting fuel in my truck, with the rest of it being spent on groceries, adding up to about $100. It doesn't sound that bad, but the fact that she took my card without asking, spent my money without asking, and I don't know what grocery she actually bought gives me flashbacks to when she did this the first time, and I just don't trust her now. How do I stop this behavior? Or am I being too overprotective of my finances and should just let her do her own thing? What should I do? I think you need to circle back and think about what you just said. She is straight up stealing from you. She is taking your card without your permission and buying stuff that you did not want to spend money on. And that is not okay. Your financial security is absolutely important. And the fact that she is violating that again is a big red flag that you definitely need to address. I think an obvious first step is to discuss this with her once again, saying, hey, you cannot take my money without asking. It would be different if there was some kind of mutual agreement between the two of you where she can use your card and get stuff as she needs it. But it sounds like after the rent fiasco, she's not allowed near your money at all, which in my opinion, based on what you're describing, is probably for the best. If that doesn't go over well, then honestly, you need to cut her off and possibly even think about breaking up with her. Somebody stealing from you is not somebody that you want to be with. And what you're describing right now is straight up stealing, but it sounds like you're being way too passive to do anything about it, which in my opinion is not acceptable. You need to stand up for yourself and say, hey, you cannot take my money like that. And obviously you want to go about this in a way that's not argumentative, but in some way is calm and collective. But I think you need to know what your plan of action is going to be if you do end up breaking up with her, which is honestly your decision. But in my opinion, if I was you, I would not be staying with this woman. She would have unfortunately proven for the last time for me that she cannot be trusted and that she's going to steal my money, which for me personally, I am not okay with. That is not the kind of partner that I would want to put up with. So hopefully this gets worked out. Otherwise, you're going to see more and more money slip out of your account without you noticing. And pretty soon, it's going to get out of control before you realize it. An entitled Karen prevents me from getting on the subway, pushes me on the ground, breaking my phone, and just when she gleefully thinks she's getting away with it, she gets caught by the security guard. Here's what happened. My previous job was on the other side of my old home city, so I had to take the subway no matter what I did. And fun fact about this subway, it can be quite busy at certain times of the day. And today at this time was one of those times. And worst of all, it was right when I just wanted to go home. The first train I tried to catch was as full as a tuna can, and the second train had a little space. Next to me was an entitled Karen with a double buggy. When I finally wanted to get on the train, the entitled Karen looked at me and made a break for it. She ran unlike anything I've ever seen before, straight for the door, squeezing into the train, and literally pushing me out of the doorway of the train. I could not believe that this was happening as I responded and said, hey, stop it, I just want to go home. This entitled Karen pushed harder and said, me and my kids also want to go home. As I was trying to explain to this lady that no, you do not need to push me out of the doorway, she says, I don't want you to take this subway. She pushes me out of the way, this time onto the ground. The doors closed and the subway rolled away. The entitled Karen looks through the window and makes some idiotic gesture and shows me some very specific fingers out of the window of the train. She rolled away looking smug and satisfied as I slowly stood up, realizing I scraped my head. I looked down in my pocket and the entitled Karen also managed to break my phone with this action, so I could not even call the police if I wanted to. Thankfully though, there was a friendly old lady and a security guard close by who checked up on me almost immediately asking me if I'm okay and if I needed any assistance. I told them that I was fine, and that the scratch wasn't that bad and that I would be fine. The security guard then told me to please take the next train to the next station and to visit the security office there. I thanked the security guard as well as the friendly old lady who helped me out, and the next subway arrived in about 20 minutes. The other security guard was writing a report about my statement I just gave him, as well as looked at the scratch on my forehead, while also recounting that they had security footage from inside the train, as well as the station where you can clearly see exactly what happened. The incident was reported to the police, and the entitled Karen had to pay for my new phone. Also, as icing on the cake, the entitled Karen was taking the train without a valid ticket. This entitled Karen, as a result of all of this, is now not allowed to be within 5 meters of me. And every time I see this entitled Karen on the train, she gives me this look of absolute defeat and disgust and scurries away to use another compartment. Hopefully, I will never have to deal with this entitled Karen ever again. It is so nice to see justice come down on people who absolutely deserve it. And this entitled Karen certainly had it coming. She pushed somebody out of the train simply because she did not want them on the train. I mean, how petty and ridiculous can you possibly be to prevent someone from traveling home? That is honestly just ridiculous, and it's so good that the security guard as well as the security footage could prove that this lady did this, because there would have been nothing worse than this lady getting away with this and denying it even if she did file a report. So this is some beautiful karma that came her way, and hopefully this taught her a lesson that you can't treat people like this and expect to get away with it. I caught my girlfriend having regular phone calls with her ex-boyfriend. As a result, we broke up, but I'm thinking about getting back together with her. What should I do? My girlfriend and I have been dating for about 6 months. This entire time we've dated, I haven't sensed anything wrong. It's been the most stable, loving, healthy relationship I have ever had in my entire life. Last week, I caught her in a small lie. In order to cover up for that lie, she lied more and more, and it built this tower of lies that completely collapsed. I ended up breaking up with her over everything. Long story short, she's been having a secret friendship with her ex-boyfriend from years ago. They broke up because their relationship became stale. They stopped spending quality time together, if you know what I mean, and essentially just became friends. He's a rather shy and awkward guy and didn't have many friends, so she continued to be friends with him. They would regularly talk on the phone like 2 to 3 times a week when we were not hanging out. To be fully honest, I don't care about her being friends with her ex-boyfriend. Relationships are complicated, and sometimes people feel the need to continue to be in someone's life, despite their past or whatever may have happened. But it's the lies and the deceit that made me end up breaking up with her. She lied to me so many times to cover up the fact that she's been calling him in secret. She did it throughout most of our relationship, even though she felt it was wrong. However, despite all of this, I still feel some sort of pull towards her that I've never felt towards any other woman in my entire life. I was so sure that she was the one, and all of this happened so suddenly. She has started therapy to try and figure out why she acted the way she did. She has shown me so much remorse and regret that I truly believe she doesn't want to act this way anymore. I'm so stuck on what to do. I don't feel like we should date right now because she needs to get her stuff figured out, but I don't want to move on either. I truly love this girl and it hurts so bad. Does anyone have any advice on how to handle this situation? What should I do? I honestly think you've made the right decision by breaking up with her. It's cool that she's gone to therapy to try and figure out her stuff, but I think you're probably best to move on from this lady. She was obsessively lying to you about talking to her ex-boyfriend, and you said it best. You probably would not have cared about the situation at all, and you probably would not have cared if they were still friends even. But it's the fact that she went behind your back and lied so obsessively that made you feel like this just wasn't worth it. And in my opinion, I think you need to hold on to that feeling, because who knows what else she could lie about in this situation. I'm not implying that she is a liar by any means, but she did feel the need to lie about something like this, especially since it's connected to her ex-boyfriend. I mean, that just looks really sketchy. So overall, in my opinion, I would stick to what your plan is and honestly try and find ways to move on, because obviously you still have some kind of pull towards her, because I think in the end you actually really do like her, and I think to an extent that's okay. But anything further than that and actually going back to some kind of relationship would risk you being lied to again, and honestly you just don't need that, no matter how remorseful she actually feels. I found out that my girlfriend cheated on me, and I don't know how to move forward. My girlfriend and I have been recently going through a tough time. There were a bunch of lies that came to the surface, and we had been having issues, but we sat down and decided to tell each other the truth about everything, and that we would work on the relationship as we have been together for 4 years already, and we're about to make it 5 in a couple of months. So giving up on the relationship wasn't that easy. After that discussion, everything seemed to be going pretty well. The communication, affection, and the whole mood overall of the whole situation felt much better, and we started being as it was back when the full love and issues weren't there. This felt amazing, and I was so happy to have a girl that's willing to work through things, and I was doing everything in my power to keep being the man she dreamed of. Fast forward about 2 months and everything is going great. We're still working on things and the relationship is going well. However, one day I had a terrible gut feeling for some reason, and my heart was incredibly heavy. She has a journal and I have never ever read it before, as that's such an invasion of her privacy, and I wouldn't want that done to me, but something in me just kept telling me that there was something there that I needed to see. I give in to my curiosity, and sadly, I did find something. Her latest entry was a prayer to God, asking for forgiveness and help. She laid out a lot of her wrongs in the journal entry, and also asked for his help to help her overcome all those wrongdoings and thoughts. She also stated that he keeps bringing good people into her life, and that all she does is hurt them. After reading a bit more of that entry, she says that she doesn't know if she's ever gotten cheated on by any of her past relationships, but that she has cheated on all of hers. The next sentence broke my heart into pieces, more than I could ever pick back up. She blatantly said that she cheated on me, and that she couldn't tell me, because if she did, she knew I would leave her for sure. After reading this, I didn't know what to do or to think, and honestly, I still don't know. I had thought we'd laid out everything about us, and wanted to start over with honesty being the top priority, but this broke me so much, because she had promised me she never did things while we dated. We both did things while we were on a long break, but we were honest about it and we understood. I'm the most understanding person ever if you're just being honest, but this huge lie she's hiding fully broke me. My issue during the relationship was that I looked at other women and sometimes she caught me, but during the relationship I never flirted, kissed, or did anything scandalous with another female, if you know what I mean. I had the utmost respect when it came to that, and I knew me looking at other women was terribly wrong, and I knew it hurt her very much, and I constantly worked on stopping doing that until eventually I didn't anymore. Her issue was being a liar. She would lie about big or small things, and I constantly kept catching her in her lies, to the point where she finally acknowledged it was a problem and that she was trying to be more honest. We both had our issues like any other human being, and I understood that. That's why I was so willing to work through things, as we're all human and we make mistakes. All that matters is putting in the effort to be a better person. I forgive and forget a lot of things, but being cheated on is something I cannot forget or forgive at all. I have never felt this pain before in my life. This girl means so much to me. I saw her as being my wife and starting a family with her. She got so close to my family as well, and was the first woman my mom ever accepted as a decent girl. There was a whole future plan with this girl, and that sentence just broke all my visions. It hurts so much because for some reason, I still don't want to leave, all because of all the memories and the love I have for her. But how could I just forget that? And she won't even tell me about it. How would I confront her about it also? I invaded her privacy, but if I didn't do that, I would have never known that she had cheated on me. I don't know what the right choice is here. I'm so conflicted on what to do. I feel like leaving might be what's best for me, but it seems so scary and painful. Every day will feel empty because she's been a part of my life every day for the past 5 years. My brain is so fogged, I'm barely sleeping, and I have to see her every day and act like I know nothing while hurting inside in pure silence, all while she walks around thinking the relationship is going great. I have never felt so lost before in my life. What do I do? This is a really tough one because you've got to know and understand deep down that this woman that you love so much absolutely cheated on you. She betrayed you behind your back, and worst of all, she hasn't even told you about it. You have got to realize that that alone is a massive red flag, and in my opinion, is a massive deal breaker. At that point, it doesn't matter how many years you have been with this lady. She cheated on you, not the other way around. She even admits in that journal entry that she has cheated on every partner she's ever had. This lady sounds like a serial cheater, and you are just another one of her victims. So I think regardless of what you choose to do, you really need to understand that first and foremost. I know if I was in your situation, there's no way I would stick around with this lady, especially after finding out her past, as well as what she's currently done to me. So honestly, I hope you do find some peace and happiness in your life, because I can tell you, unless this is addressed and some way resolved, resolved, you're probably not going to find that peace anytime soon. I made a huge mistake dating in my friend group, and now I'm pretty sure I need to find a new group of friends. As the title says, I messed up pretty bad. I dated my now ex-boyfriend in my first year of college in my friend group. Everyone thinks he's a super nice guy, and everyone had this amazing perception of our relationship, which honestly is my biggest issue right now, because it is not as perfect as people thought it was. He was so affectionate, so everyone thought we were really cute together, and I liked it at first. Then he told me I love you less than a week into our relationship, and then he started to say I'm going to marry you 2 months in. At this point, I started getting really uncomfortable. I told him my boundaries a couple of times, but he just brushed it off, so I just gave up. Whenever we would run into our little relationship issues, he would become so self-loathing that I practically had no choice but to drop the subject and instantly forgive him out of guilt. Plus, there were a couple of breaches of trust. When he shared information I told him in confidence to my mom, he was also pretty immature with his actions after we broke up. He started spreading lies to our friends about me, and when I blocked him on basically every platform known to existence, he disrespected my boundaries by somehow emailing my school email. And this has actually happened another time when we went on a break a month before the breakup. So what's my issue here? I never want to see or hear from him ever again. The only people who understand me are my hometown friends, since the majority of my college friends are also close with him. They have this perception of him that he is this perfectly amazing, fun, sweet guy, and honestly just brush off whatever I've been saying about the breakup to the point where I'm giving up on telling them. It's either they defend him or I don't even know what to bring up to them. I'm so tired of them putting him on a pedestal that he doesn't deserve with the way he treated me. They refuse to listen or offer any support to me. I'm not trying to kick him out of the group. I just need them to stop seeing him as this perfect person, which he absolutely is not. Literally, one of them told me that before we started dating, she said that she saw absolutely no flaws with him and that he would be the perfect boyfriend for me. Would I honestly just be better off getting new friends next year? I would say I'm pretty sociable, so it honestly wouldn't be awful. It would just be a lot of work. I'm just trying to decide if it would be worth it. What should I do? First off, I don't think you're going to be able to make any of these supposed friends feel any differently about your ex-boyfriend. You unfortunately can't make people see things from your perspective, especially when you know the truth about how this guy actually is, and these people are just not getting it. But honestly, real friends would have your back, and they would try to understand where you're coming from. But it sounds like they're also really good friends with this guy, so I don't think they're going to be swayed by what you have to say anytime soon. While I don't think you need to give up on them being your friend, I think it is important for you to find more friends that you can also hang out with. This can give you some solid options if those friends actually do start taking his side and only his side, which would be really unfortunate, but you know what? If they do make that decision, then that's honestly all you need to see, because that will show some true colors, and you'll know for a fact that no, I don't want these people in my life. Today, I messed up by reading my wife's journal. This didn't happen today, but more like a couple of months ago, and this is honestly such a big mess up. To provide some context, for the past 3 years, I have been working a very grueling and time-consuming job in sales, as well as marketing and recruiting. While working in that field, I got real low, like lower than I've ever been. I had little to no time off, and when I did, I was working from home. Regrettably, I started drinking more than usual. I didn't like it, but it had a hold on me that I couldn't shake. I was never aggressive when I was under the influence, but according to my wife, I became overly affectionate when I was under the influence, which I thought wasn't a bad thing, so I convinced myself I didn't have a huge problem. And my wife never said anything other than the occasional sigh whenever she saw me drinking. At one point, I was sober for 6 months, and I honestly felt great, but it didn't last. Growing up, we have always been very trusting of each other and very open with each other about how we feel about arguments or things that upset us from the past 10 years. In short, we have phenomenal communication and are very considerate of each other's feelings. We have honestly rarely ever had arguments, and when we did, it was very quickly resolved. We took proper steps to communicate to each other and to explain exactly what upset us, as well as to apologize and to make amends and to tell the other person I'm sorry and I love you. We really practice real, sincere apologies from both of us every time, and for the past 10 years, it worked perfectly. Fast forward to more recently, and I changed jobs, and as a celebration, we went on an amazing trip, just the two of us, and this was all to make up for the lost time that we didn't get the chance to share together. It was both of our idea, and I had saved up enough so we just packed up and left. Everything was amazing and we had such an amazing time. We still talk about it to this day. While on the trip, I was letting my phone charge because it ran out of power while using maps all day and driving. So she let me use hers to watch movies on her phone as she was falling asleep. I was watching a few episodes and some movies, and I remembered a while ago that I saw in her memo application a note labeled thoughts or what's on my mind. But out of the entire memo application, it was the only note that was locked. Back then, our anniversary was coming up, and she always jokingly said that if I didn't know what she wanted, that she has a list on her phone that she can give me. But I knew that this locked section was not that. From past discussions with my wife, I knew that this locked note was actually her journal. I remember at one point I even asked her if I could read some of it, only to get shot down and said, "No, honey, that's personal." At the time, I didn't really care, but I was still curious. But now that I had the phone right in front of me and we're on this trip, curiosity flooded my mind. So I go to this note and it asks for a password when you try to go into it. After a few tries of trying anniversary dates as well as birth dates, I finally decided to use one of our cat's names as the password, and lo and behold, it opened. My heart started racing and I felt my body perk up. I checked if she was still asleep and she was. Just one entry, I thought. Just one and I'll close it. So I start to read, and the more that I read, the more I regret. She had entire entries dated, and the most recent one was a full-on rant about all of my flaws, my insecurities, and my bad habits. Things that I attributed to depression from overworking and just having no drive to do anything. She picked me apart more and more each entry, and I just couldn't even understand. I don't want to share what she said, as it was all hits on my personal insecurities that she knows hurts me. So why? Why not communicate this to me and talk to me about it? I work from 6 a.m. to almost 11 o'clock p.m. every day, and I hated it because I had no time to help around the house or to be there with her, but she insisted that she understood and that she didn't care. We often communicated about it, and she always ended it with, "I'll always be there for you no matter what. We're in this together." But in her thoughts, she calls me a lazy drunk, as well as a good for nothing, saying how I don't help enough and that she cleans up after me. There was so much more that dug very deep and really hurt. And even though I hated it, I completely understood. My mind was focused on work literally 24/7. I helped where I could, but deep down, I felt it wasn't enough. I drank a lot and regrettably felt too tense without it. She had every right to be mad, but it still hurts. There was more, but I closed it and just sat there. I don't cry at all, but I'll admit I did tear up a bit. I didn't want to ruin our trip, so I kept it to myself and never confronted her about it. But starting the next day, I did everything on the trip. Driving, cooking, preparing clothes for her, everything. Anything I could, I did it all. She even started bragging to her mom and friends who called while we were on the trip. She would tell them that I was making her feel like a queen and that I've been doing everything on the trip, which honestly made me feel good. And it made me feel like I was making up for all that I didn't do in the past 3 years, even if just in a small way. I've carried on this way for months now, and I can see changes in our relationship in a very positive way. More positive affirmations from each other and deeper love. But I can't help but think about how she actually feels about me at my lowest point, and I wonder what she thinks of me right now. I regret reading her journal, and I feel I betrayed her trust by reading it. But I honestly didn't think I would find out what I did. So yeah, don't mess up like me and don't read your spouse's journal. You'll be happier if you don't. That is definitely a rough one to deal with because journals are like the one thing that you really don't want to read from somebody else. In most cases, it's literally somebody's pure, unfiltered thoughts that they really didn't want anybody else to see. So I really feel for you in this situation. But from the sounds of it, you guys have a fantastic relationship. Your communication is on point, and honestly, that journal probably was just there so she could get her feelings out of her head, put it down on pen and paper, so to say, and then to turn it around, have a positive attitude, and try and work on the relationship that she does have. It honestly sounds like she took some steps in order to cope with the things that you were dealing with at the time, and in my opinion, that is absolute evidence that she loves you and wants to keep the relationship on solid footing. Obviously, she didn't want you to see these feelings because they're not something that she wanted to share with you. These are things that she was keeping to herself because she didn't want to hurt you, and maybe just getting it out of her head and writing it down probably really did help her or in the long run, be a better partner to you, and vice versa. So I really wouldn't feel bad about how she did feel about you, but instead focus on how she acts and treats you now. And from the sounds of it, you have a fantastic relationship. I think you've learned a very valuable lesson about respecting people's privacy, and next time, respect her privacy and boundaries, because crossing that line is only going to cause friction in your relationship. An entitled Karen refuses to pay for my services after I tirelessly worked to take care of her kid as her nanny. Here's what happened. I have worked in childcare for half of my working life, at different centers, but also as a nanny and as a babysitter. As you can imagine, I've run into a lot of entitled Karens over the years, and this particular situation was definitely a lot worse than some of the other ones. First of all, I took this particular job because I needed something income-wise, so I could keep my apartment. I stuck with this job longer than I should have, and honestly, in the long run, I regret it. This entitled Karen that I was working for was a working single mom, and her absolutely sweetheart of a child needed medical and behavioral interventions, so she got the state's assistance. The state gave me this job through the Welfare Employment Office. With childcare that is state subsidized, the government pays part of the wage and the parent pays the rest. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's how it's always supposed to work. This is going to be important later. This was back in 2005, so minimum wage at the time was $7.25 an hour. The government would pay for half, and then the parent was supposed to pick up the other half. All this in accordance with the contract for the job. It varies depending on the needs of the family, but the state paid me about $3.66 an hour, and this entitled Karen was supposed to pay me $3.65 an hour at the end of each day. I met with the family and talked over these terms, and everything was agreed upon and signed by both parties. I then turned a copy of the paperwork back into the employment office for their records. The next day, which was my full day of working with this entitled Karen and her child, thankfully all went really well. It was mostly spent with me as well as this child getting to know each other and getting used to each other. The kid did try to test boundaries just a little bit, but I was very firm on enforcing routines that we already established. For me, it was a pretty standard first day, something that I would normally expect. The entitled Karen comes home and the child went running up to her, eager to show off his art project as well as what we were working on. I had other obligations after work, so I go up to this entitled Karen and I asked for my day's wage. She looked absolutely stunned, pretending like she didn't know what was going on. She then asked me, "But don't you get paid by the office for this?" I personally could not believe what I was hearing because all of this was explained when the contracts were first signed. I explained how it was supposed to work and showed her the paperwork we both had signed the day before, agreeing that she was supposed to pay her part every day. She said, but that's not how it works. I can't do that much." She was horrified that she would have to pay me anything, somehow thinking that $3.65 was a livable wage for any human being. It was an absolute nightmare trying to get her to pay me anything at all. Because I was making some actual progress with her kid, and no one else wanted to be assigned to this family, I stuck around. The entitled Karen paid me about $5 for the day, plus food and transportation costs, but that's the maximum I was ever able to get out of this lady. Eventually though, I did have to end up giving up my apartment and move in with my boyfriend who's now my husband. How tragic it is that this lady was only getting minimum wage for taking care of a child like that. She put her heart and soul into this, tried her best to take care of that kid, only for this entitled Karen to not pay her. The original poster went on to say that she did report this lady multiple times to the agency she got work from, but nothing good came out of it. Apparently the office that worked there was super corrupt, and the entitled Karen that she was working for was also a social worker in that place, so it probably never got past the front desk. And although this story doesn't necessarily have that same zing of revenge that you would expect, I think the best silver lining here is that that kid got some quality care from somebody who cared. This lady stuck around for 8 months dealing with this garbage. In my opinion, that's about 7 months and 29 days too long of not getting paid properly for a hard day's work. So kudos to this original poster for this type of dedication, because honestly, I don't think I would have the stomach to deal with an entitled Karen like that for that long. How do I tell my friend that I don't want to go on vacation with him and his girlfriend? For the 4th of July, my best friend's girlfriend invited me down to her beach house. It was supposed to be me, our other friend John, that's not his real name, and then my best friend and his girlfriend. I appreciated her inviting me down, as I don't like being home because of family problems. She herself can also relate to that, as she has her own problems, so I appreciated the invite. She's honestly like an older sister to me, and I'm thankful for her for treating my best friend right. John ended up getting sick and wasn't able to make it, so it was just me who went. I wasn't a fan of third wheeling, but anything is better than being at home. My friend picks me up and we head to her beach house. What I thought was going to be a fun weekend away from my family turned into an awkward event really quick. The entire weekend they wouldn't stop being all over each other. We went to the beach and they were quite cuddly, if you know what I mean. We go into the ocean and they're hugging and kissing in the ocean, all while I'm just trying to stay afloat. We go back to the house and they're doing the exact same thing, and I just sit there awkwardly and watch TV. We then went to an outdoor bar, as well as a club, and they tell me about how they're trying to have kids and that they can't wait to get married. My best friend told me that he even wants me to be his best man. I told them congrats and that I'd take them up on the offer, but then they start telling me some very intimate details, if you know what I mean, about their lives, and it really made things incredibly awkward. No one was even under the influence at this point, since it was when we first got there anyways. When we get back from the club, I'm trying to go to sleep on the couch, and they are on the other couch making things incredibly awkward, and I honestly wanted to scream. We went to a mall the next day, and they're going on vacation together next month, and they said that they need to shop for their getaway. I walked away and shopped on my own, and it was the most fun I had the entire trip. They even tell me that I may be a godfather in 9 months' time, because who knows what's going to happen when they go on vacation together. I just didn't know how to respond, and I was like, yeah, okay. They have been together for a year, and I understand there's a honeymoon phase, but I didn't think it would last this long, nor did I think they would be telling me these kinds of details. I guess they got the hint eventually when we were driving home, and they were blaring pop music and screaming along to it with me in the back seat, and when they told me to sing along, I didn't even look up from my phone. I have never had a girlfriend, and my friend can't comprehend that. He's had previous girlfriends all through high school and college. He's been crushing on this woman for years, and they finally got together, which I'm happy for, but he keeps telling me to just get a girlfriend. Yeah, okay, as if they just grow on trees, and that it doesn't take two people to agree to date in the first place. I ask out women in person and on apps. I've asked if any of my friends knew someone who was single, but no luck. I'm making an effort, but it's not easy, and I didn't expect it to be. Now his girlfriend texted me today and asked if I wanted to come to the beach house for another long weekend, and I don't know how to tell her no, as I honestly don't want to be the third wheel again. I just feel like they acted immature the last time I went with them, and I'd rather not go through it again, as it made me feel very sad and it was very awkward at times. What should I do? Being the third wheel in that kind of situation with people who are that passionate about each other is really awkward, and I have been the third wheel in this kind of situation, and let me tell you, yes, it is incredibly awkward. The original poster has it right. I mean, the way they were acting is just super inappropriate, especially for having a guest come along with them. It's almost like they were doing this just to kind of brag and show off to somebody. It almost also seemed like they were trying to do this just to see how uncomfortable you would become, which in my opinion is just really gross and incredibly toxic. If I were you and I was in your shoes and I had that kind of experience the last time I went with them, I would tell them straight up, I'm not really interested in going anymore. You can do it in a non-aggressive way, but I would just be honest with them. I would say, hey, I didn't really have a good time last time and I don't really want to go again, and then just leave it at that. So yeah, I would just politely decline. And if they ask for more details, just be like, hey, I don't want to be the third wheel and I was really uncomfortable the last time. So yeah, that's what I would do if I was in your situation. But what would you do? Leave a comment down below. We would love to hear what you have to say. My fiance seems to be working against my diet, and I honestly don't know what to do about this. A few months ago, I decided to get healthier. We ate a lot of fast food and I was noticing some weight gain, and I was honestly unhappy with it. I want to eat healthy and make good choices, but he keeps ordering food and bringing home treats specifically for me. For example, he'll get me McDonald's or he'll order a dozen donuts. This will happen a few times a week. Other than this, I'm the only one who cooks, and if I'm not feeling up for it, our only options are whatever he wants, and honestly, he's pretty picky. And anytime he picks the food, it almost always is fast food. I have told him I will just eat at home and he can order himself dinner, but he doesn't like this and goes on a hunger strike or broods all night. So I feel like I have to give in. It's either I plan, prep, buy, and cook dinner for both of us on a limited diet that fits his taste, or we eat fast food. I've expressed my frustration with him bringing home and offering all these unhealthy meals, and I have a really hard time saying no to them if they're being offered to me. And I told him that, but he keeps doing it. It is a problem with self-control, and I know that, but I'd like him to work with me on it, and I feel like he isn't taking me seriously. Sometimes he says, should I order this or are you gonna get mad at me again? For the record, I've never gotten mad at him ever about food. I either jokingly tease him or remind him gently that I feel really disappointed and hate myself when I eat outside of my diet. Even today, he ordered extra food without telling me and gave me 3 mozzarella sticks. The other part is that I end up paying half the total for food I don't even want. He uses food as comfort, and I notice he does this with our pets as well, and will give them human food a lot. He also likes to treat me because food used to make me happy, and he said he thinks I look good regardless. My confidence, however, has absolutely tanked, and I hate my body and I feel ashamed. I don't know what to do. I can't tell if I'm being petty and need to grow a backbone, or if he's being a jerk and not respecting me. What should I do? I think the way he acts when it comes to food is absolutely ridiculous. I think what probably started as playful flirting and somehow like this little game that you played together has transformed into your fiance deciding what you can and cannot eat, as well as pushing food on you that you're trying to break the habit of eating. You're obviously trying to make steps so that you can move forward and live a healthier life, and it doesn't help that your fiance is basically ruining that. He's not at all respecting your boundaries, and it honestly seems like he's doing this on purpose, which is really unfortunate. And sure, he loves you no matter how you look, but you've decided that you want to eat healthier and that you want to look better for you, which is all the motivation and all the reasoning you need to eat better. So I think having an honest conversation with him and explaining all of that and saying, hey, you're doing this thing that's really upsetting me and I feel like you're crossing boundaries, all of this explained to him would do a really good job of helping him understand where you're coming from. You could also just decide, hey, these are the foods that I'm going to eat, and do like some extensive meal prepping so that you can have your own food and he can go buy whatever he wants. It's obviously a more expensive option and it will definitely come out of your pocketbook, if you will, but it could be a solution to this problem so that you can eat healthier and he can still have the fast food that clearly he likes to cling to. So hopefully you have this conversation with your fiance and you're able to articulate exactly how you feel, and honestly, I hope it all works out for you because it sounds like you're making efforts to improve your health and to really improve your body overall. And because of that, I hope all of this works out and you're able to find some solution to this issue. How do I navigate having friends that don't seem to be happy for me when I start dating someone new? So I'm a 34-year-old female and I've been divorced and single for 2 years now. I've been dating off and on during this time. I have noticed a pattern of one particular group of friends who I've been friends with for the past 3 years, and these friends all happen to live together. And every time I start to date someone, they never seem to be excited for me when I meet someone new, even if they haven't met them yet. Recently, I have met someone that I'm really sweet on, and I'm honestly afraid that this friend group is already going to give me the cold shoulder, especially when I want to bring him up and talk about things we did on our dates and what I've come to know about him. I don't feel like they ever seem to be happy that I'm going out and meeting people versus just staying in the house and being miserable about my failed marriage. It seems like that was the only time they had any interest in my life. And worst of all, I consider them to be close friends, and I don't know how to approach the fact that I feel this way or tell them about how I met someone finally and that I see some long-term potential in them. I'm honestly not sure how to get through to my friends, and at this point, I could really use some advice. To be honest, from my perspective, it doesn't sound like these are very good friends. You say they're your close friends, but it doesn't seem like they're acting like it. It's a really big red flag to me personally when I see that they were only interested in your life when you were at home miserable because of your failed marriage. And now that you're getting out there and trying to find someone new in your life, they're deciding, nah, let's give them the cold shoulder and be really toxic. That's a really nasty sign in my opinion, and it is not something that you really need to deal with. I personally don't think you need to go to them ever at all when it comes to who you are or are not dating. They clearly are never going to have a positive opinion about anything you're doing anyways, so why run it by them in the first place? Is there anything you can do about this? No, not really. All of you in this scenario are grown adults, and in my opinion, you should probably find some friends who are going to be supportive, because it sounds like these 3 people are dismissive and giving you the cold shoulder no matter who it is, and that's just really not fair. So yeah, I would say try and bring it up to them again, but if this happens again, then let that be a clear sign that maybe they're not the best people to go to when it comes to your future relationships. My girlfriend is demanding to read text messages from my ex or else she's gonna break up with me, and I'm honestly not sure what to do about this. The title says it all. My girlfriend wants me to show her text from my ex-girlfriend, otherwise she says we're through. For some context, I've been dating my girlfriend for about 6 months, but due to my recent personal mental health issues, I had taken a step back from my relationship from my girlfriend to take care of myself for about a month. I spent less time with my girlfriend, however, I still still made sure to talk to her every day. We just didn't hang out as much. We went from seeing each other for 4 to 5 days out of the week to just about 1 or 2 times a week, and I hadn't done a lot otherwise. When we finally talked it out, my girlfriend said that me being away from her made her overthink a lot, and she felt that it was unfair that I didn't vent out my frustrations and such to her first, which I didn't do as I felt like it was an extra burden for her, and instead I tried to bottle it up, or I vented to 2 of my close friends about the issues. Also adding that some of my stress was from her, which I eventually talked to her about. Adding more context, I recently talked to my ex-girlfriend, who I ended on good terms with 2 years back. We did this for a bit as she started to talk to some of my friends again, and they eventually arranged something to give her a chance to talk to me again. I had spent about a month or so focused on giving myself time, but I wasn't talking to my ex for the whole time. It was more like the recent week when I talked to her and let her catch up with me, and we talked about her personal feelings, as well as me giving her an update of how I've been. It was made clear I had a girlfriend as well, so there was no funny business. The situation became an issue though when she went through some of my messages with a close friend and found out I was talking to my ex recently. But I had also made it clear that I didn't attempt to cheat or flirt. However, I did not want to show her the text messages as my ex-girlfriend had talked about some personal feelings and some issues. I had nothing to hide personally, but I wanted to respect my ex-girlfriend's privacy and turn my girlfriend down. My girlfriend went on to say that there was nothing to discuss then, and after the night, she made it clear that unless I had the intention to show her my text messages with my ex-girlfriend, then we would be apparently done. She says that I value my ex's privacy over our relationship, which I repeatedly said was untrue and tried my best to reassure her, but it was all to no avail. Currently, I have no idea what to do as I tried my best to tell her everything we talked about, but she doesn't accept it and wants to see for herself. I don't believe that I value my ex-girlfriend's privacy over our relationship, but I just think that it is unfair the way she's treating me. I don't know what to tell her or do, but I really do not want to lose her. What should I do? I can kind of understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, your girlfriend's trust in you is slowly eroding. From her perspective, it probably looks like, oh, he went to vent to his ex-girlfriend instead of me. Is he gonna break up with me or something like that? I think for the sake of your relationship with your current girlfriend, you might want to revisit the thought of, hey, maybe I should show her these messages. Because from the sounds of it, you're about to lose your girlfriend. And also, why were you not upfront with your current girlfriend about you texting your ex-girlfriend? That is super sketchy behavior no matter how you look at it. I'm sure that probably threw her into a tailspin the second she found out her boyfriend was messaging his ex-girlfriend. So I wish you the best of luck in figuring this one out, and hopefully whatever you decide to do doesn't make you lose your girlfriend that you currently have, because it honestly looks like you're about to. My mom is unintentionally causing a rift in my marriage, and honestly, I'm not sure what to do about it. My husband and I have been married a little under 10 months, and we've been together for 4 years prior to our marriage. My mother and I have a relatively good relationship, however. Her values are way different than mine. For example, I make more than her, but I live below my means, whereas she tends to live above her means and always tries to get me roped into her financial endeavors, such as co-signing for mortgages. At the same time, she does what my husband thinks is pocket watching, such as giving us a hard time if we order takeout, constantly asking us how much we have in our savings, as well as telling us how bad we are with money, and always telling me to stop spending as we, meaning my mom and I, need money. Then, in the same breath, asking to use my credit so I can take out a $40,000 car loan under my name as she and her boyfriend are waiting to hear back on their $800,000 mortgage approval. She even says that she'll make the payments when they come in. I tell my mom many times that she is living beyond her means and that maybe she should reconsider toning it down a bit. However, whenever I tell her this, she tells me that she deserves nice things that she likes. My husband is getting fed up as we have a baby, and by his logic, he thinks that if I want to finance anything, why not do it for us? He's also tired of my mom seemingly disregarding the fact that I'm married with a kid, as marriage is not just about the love, but it's also about the legalities that surround it, finance being a major factor in our marriage. He also hates the fact that my mother never once tried to help me financially, but in contrast has absolutely stifled our finances many times. He is no longer sleeping in the same bed as me, and we're arguing like never before, and it breaks my heart as he's an amazing guy. By my mom's logic, she gives examples on how other kids treat their moms like gold, while hers treat her like garbage. She also tells me how there's no such thing as an ex-mother but there is such a thing as an ex-husband. I love them both, and I want to help my mom, but I don't want to lose my husband or mess up our finances by getting involved in my mom's desire to have nice things. What should I do? I think your husband has his head on straight, to be completely honest, and it's time for you to set some serious boundaries with your mother. She is taking advantage of you, and it looks like your husband is the only person that really sees it in this marriage. She wants to use you for money so she can get her own nice things, all because she thinks she's entitled to it, which, by the way, you're only entitled to that if you can afford it. And I would even go as far as saying that your mom's not the one causing a rift in your marriage, but instead your own inaction of setting boundaries is what's actually causing the rift. If I was in his shoes, I would especially be upset at the way you're not telling your mother to buzz off. She's legitimately trying to get money out of you just so you can foot the bill when she decides not to make payments on that car loan or any of the other financial obligations she's trying to force on you. She even implied that you could have an ex-husband, but you can't have an ex-mother, with her basically saying you can get a divorce, but you can't get rid of me. So in my opinion, it's time to set some very healthy and serious boundaries just to try and save your marriage. Your husband and your child, as well as yourself, deserve to be financially stable, and that does not include having to deal with your mother and all the things she wants you to take a loan out for just so she can have nice things. That's honestly just ridiculous. So I wish you the best of luck in having this conversation, and hopefully you can set some boundaries with your mom so that she can understand that your family, your husband, and your child come first, not her. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.